Welcome to Herp Talk Radio. I'm your host, Matthew.
And I am Peggy.
And this week, we're going to do something a little different. We're not going to do our So, Peggy, how are the turtles doing? Is there anything new going on with you, though? Anything new that you've seen or heard about that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I am going to say a little bit something new about the turtles. I got them outdoors.
Nice.
Yeah, only for the day because our nights are still dropping to 30. But, it was nice to get the 2 box turtles outside in the habitat I prepared for them in the fall. And then a couple of my painteds that, really need to get a good scoot shedding in. And so it was fun to be out there and do yard work and be with those turtles and me watch them and protect them from the new puppy.
How'd that go, by the way?
Yeah, good. He's afraid of them still, so I'm glad about that. He still thinks they're giant tarantulas. So
that's good.
Yeah, that's good.
Maybe at least if he's scared of them, he won't attack them. Maybe.
Yeah, and then I've heard more from Game Fish and Parks, and I and Joel and his dad are participating in helping Game Fish and Parks track listed species that we encounter when we're out doing our wildlife photography. So that's been a fun conversation and a list like, oh boy, we have seen some of these. And she goes, and so we've been going to be sending GPSs and photographs of, a lot of the animals besides the reptiles, some of the birds that we've seen that are on the rare and endangered list. So that's been the really new happening during the week. That's been keeping me busy and putting another task on my daily requirements.
Nice. Well, at least they're outside now. Well, not permanently, but at least they can go outside now, and that helps a little.
Yeah, it does. I can turn off
a little bit,
Yeah, and turn off some of these bulbs during the day.
Right.
Yeah. So how about you? How's your reptile life or new things?
There's nothing much new on my end. Still working on some stuff. Podcast wise, I got that show that I have recorded. I'm still working on it, edit wise. It's gonna be a video, travel video.
Cool.
So yeah, we'll see if we can
get
that edited.
I'm anxious to see
I'm
that.
excited to get it done, but I don't want to rush it. Also, I get up in the morning and video edit before work, so
oh my,
it's like
how can you do that with a child or 2 or 3?
At least they're sleeping.
Well, that's
yeah, they're not up at 4 in the morning.
Oh my god.
Well, anyway, our guest tonight is Ashley Hunt. And
hi.
Ashley, how's it going tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing good. We have warm weather here in South Dakota now.
St. Louis, right. It's finally like 80 over here. I'm tired of the cold, cabin fever. I just want to be out.
And where are you at now?
I'm in Connecticut.
Connecticut. Okay. Mm-hmm. Nice.
Feel the cabin fever though. I mean, we just got done getting told we were going to get 3 feet of snow and then some. So
yeah. What?
No, last week.
Okay, last week I'm like, oh, come on.
This week it was 80. One day.
Yeah. Right, all week it's 80. And then like last week it was 40. And then it's like, God only knows. New England goes from like, I don't know, like 20 to like 81 in the same day. It's so frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
Just want to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's what we're doing here. It's all, 80, then 50, then it's like, oh, come on. I just counted how many turtle days outdoors do I have this week?
Right.
That's what I look at.
And with me, it's like, how many months do I have to count until I have to like keep my tanks cool inside?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Go for it.
I was, I knew very, very little about axolotls and even how to say it, and so I was watching some of the videos, today about like, wow, having to keep your tanks cool. That's a new one.
Yeah, it is
I
so
learned how to
frustrating and so expensive.
I
Yeah.
did learn how to spell axolotl this week.
Yeah.
That is
Oh.
for sure.
I'll give you credit for that one.
Yeah. Well,
So Ashley, where, how do, where, what, where, how do you get started in reptiles and amphibians? Because this isn't reptiles really, it's more amphibians.
Right. So really it all started like when you're little. So it's like, you're interested in everything. I was told stories from when I was younger. I used to bring in like little garter snakes and newts and stuff in the house and just let them go apparently. But it's like when you take an interest in something, your parents try to like make you happy with it, so they just wind up giving you like the pet. I had leopard geckos, I had a Russian tortoise, I think I had red-eared sliders at some point. But when you have family members that aren't really into that kind of thing, it's discriminating a little bit and kind of hard to get into the hobby. But it's like I respect them, so I'm not gonna like want to push them and force them to have a creature that they don't like. My grandmother hates them. She thinks they're like gross and slimy, and like the bugs, I think what bothered her the most out of like anything. Like I remember like the crickets used to escape out of like the containers, and I can hear her screaming from like miles down the house that there's crickets on the floor. So then after that point, like when they all passed, I wound up basically waiting until I was an adult to get them, because I'm not going to force my grandmother to like have these things in her house. So I've always had a very fond like obsession with animals. So I went into veterinary medicine when I was able to go to college. I was a veterinary technician student for some time, and then I worked at an ER down a few towns over. And doing that, it just opened my mind to herpetology. I always knew it was a thing, but like they had an exotics department, and you couldn't even imagine the things that I have seen with either like turtles or salamanders or even axolotls coming through the door through an ER with like suddenly these things have happened, whether they were like hit by a car or severe neglect, or they were borderline almost dead. And it just seeing how many of those came in versus cats or dogs was crazy. And I was like, I have to like, it's sad that no one really cares. Either they really don't care, or the education aspect where it's like, okay, I'm just going to buy this because at the pet store it's cheap, or someone was giving it to me, or I want to be a nice person and rescue these animals, but I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it out of the kindness of my heart. But it was just mind-boggling to me. It was so upsetting that like I just had to do anything in my power to like help the veterinarians and technicians get these handled. And then about 5 years ago, my husband took me to New England Herpetological Society Expo in Massachusetts. And that's when he surprised me with my first axolotl. I always knew how to take care of them, what to do, but it's like I didn't have a setup or anything. He was just a spontaneous surprise. And my husband wasn't big into like amphibians and reptiles back then. So we wound up getting everything that day, cycling that tank, and getting everything together. And he's behind me somewhere in his hide. But ever since then, it's just like they are such weird anomaly like creatures. Like I have never seen anything weird in my life other than these things. I've been obsessed with them for years, and him just surprising me with one at the expo, like I literally cried. They're so precious. They're so weird. Just looking at them, and it's just like every time I go into the pet store down here, because I have 4 of them, so like
Wow.
I stock up on worms every week, and I go into PetSmart, and then I find myself having to explain what axolotls are, and I wind up having a tattoo, and they're like, "Oh, one of those things." I said, "Yeah, one of these things," because they were like, "Oh yeah, like how's the care on these?" And I'm like, "Well, if you have like a husbandry is everything when it comes to taking care of them." So I'm like, It depends on how far your research goes. My thing is like, your research is only as far as your education goes, really. So it's like, or your education only goes as far as your research, sorry. But like the more in depth you go, the more you'll learn. Or if you're just going to stop at the basics, you might stumble upon some things that you might not heard of or wouldn't have thought to look into, and it could actually be kind of harmful.
So, where did you hear about axolotls? Was it Minecraft related? Is this
Oh God,
is
no.
this
No.
is this because
No.
of Minecraft? I'm just
No.
wondering because that's like how most people hear about axolotls.
Oh,
Let's
really?
get
So
real.
bad.
My
No.
kids are like,
Ugh.
I want an axolotl. I'm like, no, we don't. We don't want an axolotl.
Like, not for children. I
No,
don't
you
get
can't hold it. You
species,
can't
but
touch
no.
it.
Right. And
Wow.
especially like my son, he's 6 and he's like, why can't we touch them? And I have to explain, like, they're very sensitive. They're like frogs. They breathe through their skin and like they're slimy. Like those weird sensory fidget toys that are like filled with water and glitter and creatures on the inside. Think of one of those covered in soap and water. That's how it is trying to pick one up. They
Oh
are
my.
terrible. If you don't have to pick it up, I wouldn't even bother. Casper, I thought I got him accustomed to it just by picking him up and lifting him out of his tub during like tub changes while he was quarantined. No, if I bother even touching him, he'll just blast off like a rocket, like, and bang
Wow.
into everything humanly possible.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I don't even bother. It just stresses them out. So I'm like, if I need to
Wow.
get him out for whatever reason, I'll just use a giant net.
Wow. Wow.
I can't remember where I found them. I think I was in middle school. It was like biology. I was in extra classes, and it was like cleanup day, or like I used to do these Earth Day things, and then they were talking about water and like all these creatures and like different kinds of like things all around the world, and axolotls got brought up in like Spanish culture, and then it just like hit me like all like where they came from, and like I just think it's like so backwards and like dark, their history. I think it's weird. Yeah.
A little bit, and we're gonna get into that. I'm
Yeah.
very excited. So maybe let's start diving into that. What makes an axolotl a little more unique? Because it's kind of a salamander, but
Right.
not really. But it
So-
is.
Right. So they're weird. So basically they are, I apologize if I pronounce anything wrong. I can Google Translate like I did like for an hour out of all these words that I looked up. I apologize if I butcher anything. I swear I'm educated. But they have a thing called neoteny, where it's defined as like they retain their juvenile form all the way through adulthood, and they'll stay that way permanently. So unlike their very close cousins, the tiger salamander, they'll actually metamorphosize. They'll shrink their gills, their legs will get longer, their fins will go away, and their eyeballs will become more prominent, and they'll start to become more terrestrial. As for axolotls, they'll just permanently stay in the water. They'll come up for gulps of air if they need to. Like my girls over here, they'll do it once in a blue moon, or like they'll just breathe how they do. They have what's interesting, they actually have 3 sets of ways to breathe.
Oh wow.
And that's what I thought. Yeah, they have their gill slits that are right behind like their nice gill filaments that they have, those nice pink things that are on the side of their head. They also have very, very underdeveloped lungs, and they breathe through their skin. So I think that's pretty interesting that like
Heck
they
yeah, it
keep
is.
all of that, but then also if they do morph into anything, they also have lungs. So it's like they kind of have like everything packed into one in case of like that just in case kind of thing.
Interesting. Yeah, I was watching the video today that they were doing a lot of research on their, what cells are really helping these animals grow entire limbs.
Right.
And some of the ones that they were taking out of the water a lot, they were losing their gills, and then they, that's what I found really interesting. It's like as long as they're left alone, they'll stay in that juvenile state.
Right.
But yeah, that is more that I'd love to hear about. It's like, okay,
right. It's like they kind of have like everything in their life planned out before they're born, like with genetics. It's like, okay, so if this happens to you, you have this planned out. But if this doesn't happen to you, you have this, and then you also have this other thing. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I was amazed. And then what was it that they found that there was a difference in their thyroids, whether they would change, and so then they added what was it, thyroxin to those, and then they became adults and lost their gills and were air breathers. It's like,
yeah,
huh?
yeah. So that's another strange thing. It's called like forced metamorphosis. Some of them in the pet trade, I guess you want to say, majority of them nowadays are mixed with tiger salamander DNA, because you can crossbreed the two, and then when you inbreed them, it just becomes more and more prominent that this gene mutation of them metamorphosizing becomes a thing. Or I would never suggest doing it, but people do it for God only knows why. They inject them with iodine, which forces them to metamorphosize over time, but their lifespan is completely cut in half. So to me, they live for like, 10 to 20 years max with like proper husbandry. When I looked that up, yeah, you wouldn't even think that. It's just like, that's as long as like some reptiles and such. And I was like, oh, because even like some frogs and stuff don't even live that long. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then they also, like you said, the thyroid problem. I follow this woman on Facebook. I tried so hard to find her page, and I couldn't find it. She rescues these morphed axolotls, and she studies them. Actually, like she mentioned that, it is a thyroid problem with some of them, or it could be a number of factors, but she's diving into it with like actual science. I'm so upset that I could not find it, because I'm like, I know this woman, she has everything I'm looking for, but I can't find it, because it's like you go on Google and it's like there's only so much you can really find that's scientific based on these creatures. It's like even YouTube, it's like they explain it, but then it's like there's not much that goes beyond. It's like, what are the cells? What is this? What exactly is it that's doing this? And even scientists are like, we're trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Now, the ones that are forced to morph into adult form, do they maintain the ability to regenerate their limbs as well?
Yes, they do. Yep. Kind of like, I believe most salamanders and newts, I believe, have that ability. But with axolotls, it's more in depth. So they're known to like whatever injuries they have, or like another axolotl bites their body parts off, like their limbs or their gill filaments, they'll be able to grow them back. Or it's like for science purposes, I know biologists are helping to try to understand their purpose with trying to help people regenerate their body parts, either if it's like a birth defect or an accident of some kind. They'll cut like parts of their brains or their hearts or like certain things, and they'll grow back. It depends on like the severity of it. So it like has to be like, can't be like almost the whole thing, but it could be like a decent portion, their brain, spinal cords, just like their ovaries. So it's pretty crazy.
Wow. So how do they live out in the wild? What is their normal habitat like?
They come from Mexico City. I'm going to mispronounce this. It's called Examalico. I knew I was going to say that wrong, but it's a valley in New Mexico. They actually have it's like on like the most high altitude. It's like this vernal pool, but so far it's pretty much dried up to nothing. And they're also in the canals and waterways of Mexico City. So basically it's just kind of like little vernal pools, little, like canals, but they typically can't be found. I've tried to find articles in the past of like how many are left or anything, and like you could find a few articles that say like, there's 50 left, there's none left, or maybe there's up to 1,500 or 2,000 left. It's crazy. They what's weird, it's they derived from, Aztec culture. They were named after a Greek god, Axolotl, which I find ironic because he was a rebel god. He was supposed to be executed by other gods and turned into an axolotl to try to resist death, but the other gods found him and killed him anyway when he would turn into an axolotl. So, I just find it deep, dark, and ironic that like Aztec kings back then ate axolotls. So it's like you knew about this and then you turn into one and you die. And now they're critically endangered because the culture still thinks that they're a delicacy, but I know they're trying to change their ways and such in their culture, and they've actually opened up quite a few conservation projects. But they live relatively, I want to say, very unsafe. It's polluted. It's very what's that word, like infrastructure with people, like the predation and native invasive species killing them. So it's just a matter of helping them try to repopulate. But with everything that's going on and the more man-made things are happening, the smaller and smaller it gets, and they disperse throughout those canals. So they're going to have a hard time finding each other to mate. But with them being so sensitive and porous, the pollution knocks them out.
So I can't think of the correct word, but are they technically extinct in the wild? Like nominally extinct, or they just have no ecological impact because there's so little of them that I can't think of the right word.
I know what you talk about.
We talked about it with Ryan when we recorded last week, but yeah, I think they're technically extinct, aren't they? Well,
yeah, and it's
kinda
hard for them to be found in the wild because they disperse so much, because they're not going to want to be somewhere where it's polluted or surrounded by, like, there's no structure for them to hide. There's like really nothing for them to hide in, or other species are trying to kill them, so they're not going to want to be there. So when scientists are going to go to try to collect them for study to see how many is there, it could either be like 50 or maybe only a few hundred. So it's hard to really tell. So that's why they're pretty much say, they're exactly extinct, because there's not an exact count that they can really put out there to say how much is left.
So the ones in captivity I hope that there are a lot of people trying to keep them genetically pure, without crossing them with tiger salamanders, so that, if
Right.
Is there how are they listed right now internationally? Are they listed? Are they on the endangered species list?
I know in Mexico they are 100% critically endangered. I think even worldwide, because they're only 100% found in Mexico. Mm-hmm. So they can't even be imported or exported out of there. It's illegal. I know other states, California, Maine is another one, and I think Virginia just lifted theirs, but they're illegal in those states. I couldn't find why. It could be because they could breed with tiger salamanders, maybe, but I'm not sure about California. It's a hot mess. But the pet trade has its pros and cons, definitely. I would say it almost is kind of a doom, but also the only thing that's keeping them alive. So I would say that while some of them might be mixed with tiger salamander DNA, you do have those breeders that keep them pure or know who to get them from, where they're just axolotls. They're not going to anywhere near be related to their wild counterparts, but they'll keep them pure, clean, definitely genetic tested, well-bred. But I just read an article by this guy that I follow. He's a scientist that works with them closely. He said about like over 80% of axolotls in captivity are all related. So that is a gigantic problem when you want to breed them, because inbreeding in some species isn't really something you want to do, because you lose either the good genetics or, you know, their ability to be immune to illness and disease and all of that. So, and then the birth defects come, like some of them will be susceptible to, it's like short toe syndrome, where they literally have no toes and then they fall into fatty liver disease or dwarfism and their life is cut severely short. But so it's kind of like a mix, I would say, but there are definitely a lot of people out there that know what they're doing and try to definitely keep them just as pets, or you have those true reputable breeders that definitely do their research on who they're buying from, and then you have people that just want them because Minecraft. So
Right.
yeah.
Do you know how? I think I read something somewhere at some point, which I hope you can help me out here, about most of the axolotls that are in captivity have tiger salamander blood in them. So the majority of what you see is already mixed. And we're just trying to keep it. That's correct, right? Okay.
Yeah. So it's and it's hard to tell. You can't just look at an axolotl and just be like, "Oh, it's that," because you can look at larvae sometimes and they look the same, but tiger salamander larva has like a pattern to it. As for axolotls, are like, you have like melanoids, which is like you're just all black ones, and then you have your coppers, which is, you know, it's like a brown coppery color, and then I call mine the boring ones, because I just have Casper's albino, so that's as plain as it gets for him. But then I have 2 dirty leucistics, so it's just like they're all white with like dirty like freckles on their face. And then my rescue that I just got, she's just a normal leucistic. She's just like a whitish pink color. But it's hard to tell really if, like, you know, the axolotl you just bought from a breeder will ever morph into a possible terrestrial axolotl because of its DNA. So it's kind of like, I don't know if breeders could test it by doing, like, I don't know if there's blood panels for these things or something.
There would be some way.
Sure.
I
Like
bet no one's done the research.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure if someone really wanted to or is doing it would know, but it is a good question, because I always wondered that. I'm like, how do I know? I look at Casper sometimes. I'm like, I swear to God, if I find you doing some weird stuff and I'm not prepared for it, he's my problem child. I love him so much, but he's I can't.
What does he do that makes him the problem child?
He has periods of time for some reason where he'll stop eating for like about a month or 2. I don't know if it's because of, like, you know, amphibians breeding times, especially for salamanders, are like, you know, early spring when they start to like arise out from like the cold into like almost summertime. But with them, I'm like, you're captive bred. So it's like, I don't really like to compare captive bred to wild too much, especially if they've been in captivity for decades. But with
Numerous
him,
generations.
Right. So it's like, while they are, I guess, wild animals, but I don't know what it is, and he stresses me out. So then I tub him to like make sure that, like, you know, are you losing weight? Do you look okay? Like, make sure his gill filaments are okay. Make sure he has no like wounds or anything. I'll try all these numerous treats, but he hates everything I give him if they're not worms. God forbid. I'm like, okay, here's a treat. Nope. Or he'll like, I have carnivore sinking pellets, and he'll eat that. He'll spit it out. And I'm just like, please just eat something. And then there's garlic guard that you could buy. People use it for fishing. You could like dunk the fish in there, and it's more enticing to like fish. You can use it for them to entice them to eat. And he just, nope. And then randomly he'll just start eating again. I'll check water quality and everything. And I'm like, you are terrible. All my other ones, forget it. Like Medusa, I just rescued her from somebody that I'm glad that he admitted it. He had no time for her. And he admitted it. He was like, you know, I feel so bad. I'm like, but he did take good care of her. And I would rather someone own up to why they're getting rid of them instead of like them suffering because you're not home. And he checks in on her all the time, but she eats like a cow. Like, she'll have like 2 or 3 worms a day. As for Casper, he's like maybe 2 a week, and that's it.
Are you talking like earthworm size or night
Yeah,
crawlers?
like night crawlers. Yep.
Oh my.
Yeah, she's huge. Like she gets so round, and I'm like, please, you're gonna get obese. But I'm like, if she's eating it, but I'm like, I'm cutting you off after 2. Like you can't have more.
Yeah.
You act like you're emaciated and you've never eaten before.
So, I know you can't really say in the wild, but what would their role in the environment be? Like, what is their behavior? Naturally, not specifically captivity setting, but you can
Right.
anecdotally see that too,
Right.
you know?
Mm.
So what
I
do
would
they
s-
do? Do they just hide all the time? Are they out exploring? Are they looking at rock? Like, what are they doing?
Right. I would say that they probably hide around about because they're vulnerable. They have absolutely zero self-defense. They have a sticky slime coat that's on their body, so that might not taste good to predators, but I guess if a fish is going to eat them, they're going to do it anyway. But they don't have any defense mechanisms. I'm not sure if they're nocturnal or not. I know my guys, they don't really like lights because they don't have eyelids. So I would assume that they would like to, go hide around in like log holes or like underneath bridges or like the canals that they seek out. Um, their natural prey would be like different kinds of bugs or I think I saw like crawfish or like small little fish that they would eat. So I'm sure that they would keep like a healthy biodiversity. So it's like they would eat so many of these certain things to keep their populations in check too. So it's like I feel like they had a good source in a healthy ecosystem, but not too much to actually make a big impact since they were also severely vulnerable themselves. So
Yeah, I would assume that, as you had mentioned earlier, with the introduction of non-native species, their
yeah,
behavior had to change because they had new predators they had to hide from that
yeah,
they possibly didn't have before. Different sized predators that made them more vulnerable.
exactly. Yeah. They're definitely very skittish. Any kind of like movement makes them take off, and they're very, very, I would say, like, even amongst themselves, their behavior, they're not territorial. They're not going to go off and like attack each other or, be malicious for space, but they can be cannibalistic towards each other if there's not an abundant amount of food source and when they are young.
Mm.
So even babies with breeders in captivity, they some do, some don't. Some separate them once their food drive really kicks in because they'll wind up attacking each other and biting their limbs off because they're
Wow.
constantly hungry. I don't think they exactly know what they're doing. They I think they all just collectively share one brain cell. But
I'm
they're
hungry.
not
This looks like food. I'm gonna eat
exactly
it.
Yeah. Well.
exactly. I love them so much, but like they are collectively, like all of mine are just one collective brain cell. But I would think like basically it's like they're just these sweet, cute, anomaly looking animals that just want to live, but like every odd is against them at this point.
Hmm. Boy, I had the question and it zoomed out of
Oh,
my head.
were you gonna go down the nature route,
Uh,
or can we move on
well,
to the captive setting?
yeah, the captive setting, because it sounds like the nature route is pretty toast.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
And
even I was looking up.
yeah,
I was like, I
and
want to tell you guys as
oh,
much as I can, but I'm like, oh,
the
they're
what?
doomed. I'm like, everywhere I look, it's just dark and death. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Well,
Well,
I noticed you like metal music, and so it probably has
Yeah,
put some of them on the album cover. But
yeah, sure.
but I was wondering if you if you've done some research into what professional zoo-like um, uh, entities that are doing uh,
Like
assurance
conservation work.
colonies. Yeah, the assurance colonies of keeping
Right.
genetically pure and then trying to get in the genetic material that is, like you said, to get away from that 80% are related.
Right.
Have you done any research into finding out what zoos or like entities are cooperating with the Mexican government to try to find new pure genetic material so that they can have assurance colonies that have good genetic diversity. Have you looked into that sort of thing?
I did. I just recently researched conservation projects. I wrote it down over here. I'm going to butcher this so bad. There's actually a Mexico Zoo that just opened up not too long ago. It's specifically like an Axolotl museum and amphibian conservation center. They have over 370 different species of amphibians in there. So what they're doing, it's I would have never expected that many amphibians to be in Mexico alone.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But I'm just like,
yes.
Oh,
Did she
no.
freeze? Oh no.
Oh no.
Hello.
Maybe she'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Oh, I heard her. There
we
she is.
go.
right.
Very
I'm
mad.
like, oh no. I was like, no, don't do this. We're on a roll here.
Yeah. So Mexico has 300 and some amphibians in the. This is cool. I live like
Right.
5 miles from one of the largest reptile zoos, reptile gardens, and so it's interesting. I didn't know they had an amphibian zoo. That's interesting. I suppose they have
know,
tree
I'm like,
frogs
I could go
and
there. I want to go. Right. I'm like, I just
all
want to
that sort of
go.
thing.
Basically, they're working together with the ICUN, so International Union for the Conservation of Nature. They basically took an estimate to try to guess how many axolotls would be left in the wild. So it's like 50 to 1,000. They're kind of like taking a gamble, but they're working.
That's a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
Right. So I even tried looking into that. I'm like, it's either really low or either high. I'm like, I don't. That's why it's like I kept.
Well, and
coming,
1,000's
like, all these.
still not high, but it's a
Yeah.
lot more than 50. I could probably keep 50. I could not keep 1,000.
Yeah, but did okay. And before I have this question in my head because my brain is full of Benadryl. I see then there it goes. Okay, so like, are they finding that out of the 50 or 1,000? Are they finding it in separate locations so that they could have some genetic diversity, or are they finding it? What are they finding?
So basically, they released over. This is another contradicting thing, and it was annoying me. They stated that they released over 2,000 specimen into the Xochimilco habitat. So basically, they separated these canals in New Mexico by 7 bureaus and released 2,000 into the Xochimilco habitat, so it's like they could become more diverse and like spread out, so it's like it's more clean, it's safe. The people said that like those canals and burrows are more clean like than their streets, the pure water, so they're trying to help them reproduce with like the most clean environment and slowly take some to each bureau so they can keep swapping and mixing the diversity. So it's like hopefully they can boost better immune system, maybe come up with, hopefully, I guess you'd say like dart frogs, maybe the things that they eat could eventually make them somewhat toxic, or, develop something to help them thrive. So it just seems like all of it's mainly human error that they're trying to fix over decades. So I would give them, credit for doing it, but it just, the numbers bother me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, ugh. I'm finding like several different articles, like 50, and now they just released 2,000, but they estimated this, and I'm like, yes, but like if you estimated 50 to 1,000 left, where did these 2,000 come from?
Yeah, obviously captive breeding.
Right. They could be coming definitely like maybe they took wild counterparts into a breeding facility in this museum. Maybe they just bred in over an abundance, and then when they are mature, they can mature around 9 months to 12 plus months. Mm-hmm. So as soon as they are able to breed, they'll have at it. They'll breed nonstop. Like even in captivity, you want to make sure you don't keep a male and a female together, because he will breed her basically until she dies. They'll lay up to a few hundred to 1,000 and such odd eggs, literally 24 hours to 78 hours after they breed. They can instantly
Wow.
lay eggs. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That sounds to
yeah,
me as if they have some proto eggs, and then once they're fertilized, then they develop into their
something. Yeah. So I
fallopian
tried to
tubes.
find so many articles on like what they're doing, but like they're just so weird that like when I research, I try to make sure I find like those scientific like PDF files from like legit studies or anything and not really go after like, news articles or anything. But it's like, I guess they're kind of resourceful, but it's like if I can't really find the main source, it's kind of like just a giant question.
Now you had mentioned New Mexico a number
Mhm.
of times.
Yep.
Do you mean Mexico or New
Mexico
Mexico?
City. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
I just wondered if that was a slip of
Yeah.
the tongue or
Yeah.
what, because I thought, oh, they're working with someone in New Mexico University or something. But
Right.
okay.
Oh, they actually are working with, I have it written down here. They're working with the United Kingdom, Japan, and Cuba with this conservation project. So I'm not sure exactly how they're going about it, or if they have like breeding facilities or some type of genetic thing going on in like the other countries. I haven't dove too deep into that, but it definitely seems like you can like go on Google and search up like what is it, axolotluk.org or something like that, and they come up with so many articles of certain science-based things, but I haven't found one any related to this. So
Hmm. Hmm. So what are their? I mean, their behavior with one another. I mean, so it sounds like you keep them separate from one another, or
I
um,
actually have my two males together, and then my two girls are in a separate tank. They really don't care as long as you have a decent amount of space to house them. I think like the general rule is you can have 20-gallon long tank for one, but any other axolotl you want to buy after that, you have to have 10 more gallons added onto that. So for like two, it's like 30 and then so on. But with mine, I have them in 40-gallon breeders. They like more floor space because they don't really take advantage of the height. They don't really swim. At least my guys don't. They're just, I call them decoration. They're like living decorations. They just sit
uh,
there. So
Fair enough.
and they're I'm like, at least you're cute. But
That's what fish do. I mean, they swim around a little bit, but
right.
yeah.
And it's like they have that occasional lay there, and I'm like, "Are you alive?" And I'm like, "Okay, you moved." Like,
Okay.
I'm like, I'm not all for tapping the glass, but like, are you hello? But yeah, my two boys, they don't care about each other at all. I was worried about Casper because I've had him for 4 years before I got Fenny, and I quarantined my new ones for 30 days before I introduced them, and Casper just immediately just, nope, I'm going over here. I don't care. But like they'll be next to each other. They don't really show affection, kind of like that controversial of like, do amphibians and reptiles show affection? They don't really care. They'll be next to each other, but I think it's just more of like wherever I land or wherever I walk is where I'm just gonna stop walking or just be. But
Mhm.
the females too, they hang out. They'll just live amongst each other. I've heard people and some breeders saying that like, they've had aggressive responses towards each other or breeding responses where they'll like bite each other's limbs off or like go after each other. And I have never personally experienced it, but it's kind of reminds me of like other animals too. You just never know. I don't know if they have like aggression in that kind of like however they were bred, or if they're not fed enough, because like I said before, like with them being cannibalistic could be maybe they're not fed enough or just something just isn't clicked right maybe. But yeah.
Now their mouth, their tiny little teeth, they're almost like rows of teeth, kind of like catfish, or I'm
Right,
trying
it's
to
like
think.
sandpaper almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
how with that type of dentition, how is it that they bite the limbs off one another? You'd think they would just be gumming each other to.
Right. Right. I even wonder that same thing. I think it's because when they latch on, like even watching them eat worms, it's kind of like an alligator where it's like they thrash back and forth really fast. So I think it's just like severing it really quick. And they have a more cartilaginous skeleton than they do calcified bone. So I think it's pretty much just easier for their limbs to like break off at that point. To a certain point, it'll
So
just pop off.
so is it
Yeah.
like some of those lizards that let go of their tail, or is it a twisting.
Yeah, it's
Separation.
pretty like morbid, where it's just like they're just going at it and ripping at it until it like comes off. Yeah,
Like rip. Yeah, instead of a clean
Yeah.
bite, it's
they're just ripping at it.
well, yeah, ripped
Yeah,
off.
even watching them
so.
go after worms, I'm like, ew, you guys are so malicious. Like, there is no, like, you guys are too cute to be that mean. Like, but even I would say breeding them can definitely change behaviors. I haven't paired mine yet, but I want to. But I have a rescue, and she's just pet only. I'm not breeding her. I don't know her genetics. Casper was a gift that was given to me by my husband, and he didn't ask for like the genetic makeup, which I'm not going to blame him for it. So just because I know that aspect, I don't want to take that gamble. But my two youngest I have, I want to find them good partners. I just haven't really found a gendered one, but it's like when they're gendered, they're more expensive. So I'm like, maybe I'll just wait a little bit. But they're breeding. They could be a little bit aggressive. Like my male axolotls will try to mate with other males if they want to. They'll annoy each other. I noticed with my youngest, they drop sperm cones all in the water. You'll see like these little white pieces of like floating debris in the water, and like they'll take their mate and kind of like run them like a train through like the whole like where all like the sperm is laid, and like aggravate each other. And it's like, but they don't really snap at each other throughout the whole process. You would think like two males like getting irritated, but I haven't witnessed any.
So there's like no combat whatsoever then.
No, and it's like they're both doing it
that you've
to each
seen
other.
Anyway.
No,
Are other breeders having that or seeing the same thing?
I know of one breeder. He said that he had to separate his male because he was being aggressive towards her. He wound up ripping some of her gills off and like some of her toes. So he doesn't know exactly why. He was just like, and he did it to almost every female that he was paired with. So he doesn't breed him anymore. He wound up selling him and getting rid of him. So he's just like, as much as it sucks, I can't have you harming my females, and it takes them a little bit to heal. It could take, depends on the severity, they could take up to literally a few hours to maybe a month or two to like fully heal, depending on the severity. But he's like, I'm not going to risk, because now I can't breed these females because that's too much stress on their body to deal with, and then it's just not right. He's like, I can't lose my stock or all of this because of this one male.
So now, I'm totally ignorant on.
No, you're okay.
Me too. That's why we have her here.
Yeah, salamander breeding and axolotl breeding. Axolotls. Okay.
It's a tongue
so now the female lays eggs, and then he'll coat that with sperm, or how's it go?
So it's weird, kind of like how I described the males running each other like a train practically. So if it's a male and a female, he will drop sperm cones, and the female will basically be pushed around the enclosure on top of the sperm cones, and her cloaca will open, and she'll just like suck them right up. Yeah.
Wow.
It's weird. I obviously haven't seen it yet, but I've seen some videos and like some breeding videos. I'm like, that is the weirdest thing I have ever seen. And she chooses to do this. And then to have all of those babies like a day or like a few days after, it's crazy.
So then she'll give birth to live babies.
Nope, she will lay eggs. It's kind of like how frog eggs are, where they're like coated in a mucus and they kind of look like little jelly beans.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And then how long does it take for the babies to come out of that egg globule?
So if I'm not, I just saw a cycle picture. I should have had it up, but it could take roughly about, I want to say, close to like a month for it, like the whole entire cycle, and for them to even grow limbs. It doesn't take that long. It takes about like a month or two to them to actually fully develop into like something this size.
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy. They develop super fast.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Interesting.
said breeding in 9 months to a year. That's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just like my male Casper didn't show because females have a flat bottom. As for males, they have a more prominent cloaca because that's where like I don't like that's where their testicles would be. So it's like a very large lump. Casper didn't show until he was after a year. And I had Fenny and Hella together. They're related. So I'm like, you know what? I'll just keep them together. They've been together. And then I noticed one day that Fenny dropped and I'm like, oh no, you guys are I'm removing you immediately. I'm like, you are way too young to have babies. And you're related. No. And I immediately put a separator in and put him in with Casper. And I'm just like, I'm not doing all that. I'm like, I don't have to. I'm like, I was like anxious for like days. And I'm like, I don't like, I have millions of tanks laying around here. And I'm like, but then I have to go get like a culture to make baby food. And then I have to go get another air pump. And I'm like, I don't have another extra cycled filter. I'm like, please don't have babies. Please don't. Oh my God. I
Whoa.
was so anxious.
So
Well,
go ahead.
that goes into captivity. Before we get there, do you know if most salamanders are not combative? And that's just normal in the salamander world?
I don't think that they are really. I think they're kind of just more docile and just pretty laid back. I think they only really get active during mating, like breeding season. Because even like the documentaries I've seen and things that I've looked up, I haven't really seen aggressive nature like displays. Because it's like, you know, you have like frogs, amphibians, they'll have like the displays and like they're vocal, they'll fight off other males and like the ways that they do. I've never really seen a salamander show any type of like combative behavior.
Okay.
I think it just might be them kind of just they just kind of chill, like they vibe together, I guess.
There might be some outliers, but overall, probably not.
Right. There might
Okay.
be some out there, right.
Okay, now we can keep moving on with breeding. I just wanted to know because that's been in my
Yeah.
head for a while. So captivity, how do you keep them before we even breed them? Let's. I'm want an axolotl. Let's say I don't, but
Right.
let's say I do. What do I? What's the requirements? What's the care setup?
Well, I would say like most fish, if when kept properly, you have to go through a nitrogen cycle, which basically is introducing beneficial bacteria to the filter that keeps your water clean. I just finished cycling this one behind me because I had some issue with like fly larvae and it was so unaesthetically pleasing. I wound up restarting my cycle. I regret every ounce of doing that because it takes forever. But it's like patience is your number one key with cycling the tank. And once that's fully established, you want to make sure your tank is definitely 20 gallons or bigger. Their water needs to be cold. So people argue about this aspect, but it can be within the 50-degree range, but definitely no higher than 68 degrees. You could get an aquarium chiller, but they don't come at all anywhere cheap on the market. Like I use desktop fans if I need to cool my tank down just a few degrees, or you can convert like a mini fridge into a chiller. There's plenty of YouTube videos how to use like water, like garden hose and like hook it all up to like make a whole system. We tried that once. We like blew out the fridge and I'm like, nope, not even worth it. I'll just freeze water bottles and just keep doing it that way. I'm like, it's not worth it.
Wait, okay.
But,
So with the frozen water bottles, you just put that in the tank or you put it on the outside of the tank?
Yep.
Yeah.
We put it
How-
right in.
Is that's how you're keeping it cool then? Is frozen water bottles?
I do that when I have nothing else, but normally I'm prepared like with my desk fan because it's like a decent size. You can dangle it over there. It's not going to fall in or anything. It'll definitely take down my tank like 5 to 8 degrees, so I never have to worry about it. But unless you get like those super, super hot days, I'll like freeze like a giant water bottle and I'll just attach it to like this inside of the tank and it'll just slowly thaw out through the day. But that's like my last resort. If I kept having very hot weather, I would definitely go out and maybe try to find a chiller on Marketplace or I love joining like those free pages around my towns, because you never know what you're going to find that people just give away for free, because some people are like, okay, I know this item's super expensive and used. I'm just going to get rid of it for free because it's a pain to sell. So I have yet to stumble upon a chiller, but I think so far throughout all of these years, my tank has only gone the highest 70, but I bring that down even just with a desk fan by like 8 degrees. So they're still in like a good range.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
I take it that some people will have them in air conditioned rooms, or
Yeah, you could do that. Yep.
okay.
When I
But
used to live in an apartment, we used to live on the 3rd floor with Casper. He was in a 20-gallon. I just put him like right next to the air conditioner, and it just sat at 60 permanently. And if it went off, or like it was on like what eco-friendly, where it just turned on and off, his tank didn't even go up or down. So it was at a good consistency.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, and I guess turtles are easier than that.
Yeah.
You don't
I
have
don't
to
want
keep
a
them
turtle.
cold.
I'm right.
Don't have to-
I'm like,
yeah.
I want to get a turtle, but I don't have the space for a turtle.
Well, well, you have 40-gallon breeder tanks. That's about what, I just have one 75-gallon setup for my older ones. But yeah, and then like in the blizzards, if all of a sudden we lose electricity, they just have a chill down and then they start mating.
Oh my gosh, party.
It's like, oh, the females are slow enough. Now I can mount her, kind of thing.
Oh my God.
So
Taking advantage of a very bad situation.
so
Turtles are weird.
Yeah.
well, so I usually keep the males separate from the females. So if I do want, some mating to occur, I chill the tanks, or, usually now with it being spring, I'll set up one tub outside, and when the water is around 60 degrees, I'll put the pair out there, and they'll mate within 2 or 3 hours, and then I separate them again, and it's just it's easy. It's really easy. But yeah, it's boy, I mean, it sounds like you really really have to monitor, I mean,
Yeah.
the temperature and the filter, and it, turtles too, it's like, the water's getting a little, if I don't draw down the tank immediately, it's like, oh, I'll wait a week because I'm out of town or something. No big deal. It's, but boy, I'd be nervous to be a
Yeah, it can
axolotl
be.
mom.
Especially like when the power goes out. When we first moved
Oh.
here, um, when we first moved here, we had a power outage. And this is something that I would definitely recommend for someone that has any aquatic animal, but especially axolotls, because when your power is off for so long, there's no air. I have sponge filters, so it's like that needs a constant flow of air through it. Even just like hang on the back filters, it needs that constant water flow to keep the bacteria alive. If your power goes off for a certain amount of time, there goes your whole entire filter. So it takes months to filter a tank. Even though if you use all these chemicals, do things correctly, cycling takes forever. And that's why like I'm passionate about doing it correctly, educating on how to like do it properly. But when we first moved here, we lost power for about like a week or so, and it was agonizing. But they sell these things, they're battery operated air pumps that run off like those giant batteries. So I wind up hanging them on the tank, and then you could connect it to your sponge filter, so it like plugs into your wall outlet. So anytime it knows that the power's cut off, it instantly clicks on.
Oh.
So it's always like feeding your filter. I have to set mine up now that I have like this 40-gallon setup, and I definitely need to keep an eye on the weather. And it makes me so anxious knowing that I don't have that set up, because it's like, what if the power company comes and I'm not home and the power goes off? Like, there goes everything. This tank cycle was so stressful this time, and it actually just got done yesterday, and I'm like, yes, now I can put them in their house, and now the podcast is tomorrow. I could sit here with them here, and everything looks nice. But yeah, it's a real lifesaver. Like, I wound up having to put Casper in a tub just because I was so worried. But like, with the fluctuation of like the temperature, because we had no air conditioner, and if the quality of like the temperature fluctuates too much, they can get illnesses, especially like fungus. And fungus, if it comes to sort of like to a certain point, it can like harm their slime coat, their health, they'll wind up dying. But I was just so anxious. I'm like, thank God. Oh my God, I love these battery operated things. But for the most part, it's like, you know, they're decent to take care of. The setup's not relatively too hard. You know, you want a bigger than average tank, 20 gallons or more. Definitely whatever filter really works. Because
Uh-oh. What's going
It's
on?
me who lost connection.
oh no, you're rearranged. I was like, what is
Yeah.
happening?
And now it's all backwards. And I don't know how to fix it.
Well, this is a nice arrangement.
Right.
Oh yeah. So I had a question, and then that happened. Let me look here. So okay, yeah, the rating.
Yeah.
You know, they'll say you know, like, rate this pet as far as difficulty. You know, like they'll even have that with turtles. You know, like, this is for a beginner turtles. This turtle's a good beginner. This turtle is intermediate. This takes advanced. You know, to have, you know, this kind of turtle. So what would you rate? You know, for someone who wanted to get into this, you know, what type of rating would you give this?
I would say it definitely depends on the person for sure, but I would definitely say maybe a 3.5, because like I said before, you know, your research is basically how far your education is going to go based on them. Like if you just go off on a whim and, you know, let's just say you do or don't cycle a tank will be, you know, if it'll make or break you at this point. So basically, if you're not prepared, it's definitely going to be extremely hard, because with their water, which is very important to keep them healthy because they're amphibians, they breathe through their skin. They're susceptible to illness if things aren't done correctly. Their water temperature is off. They're susceptible to ammonia and nitrite burns if the tank cycle's off. And basically, if you do your research, I would definitely say for me, they are, I want to say like maybe like a 4, because it's like still kind of challenging. You know, you got water changes you have to do weekly, or if they're tubbed for whatever reason, you have to do daily water changes, and you have to use a water conditioner. Prime by Seachem is one of the best, and you have to make sure it doesn't have like certain chemicals like aloe in it. It does something to like their slime coat, like it over thickens it or does something to it. But I would say like they're not too hard once you know what you're doing, like especially when your tank's cooled, it's cycled. You have to make sure you have plenty of hides. They don't need any heaters, so you don't ever have to worry about like, you know, it just going AWOL or like cooking them, because they need very, very, very cold temperatures. But you can, a lot of people think that, you know, you got to make an aquarium look pretty. And of course, it's like mine, it drives me nuts because I'm more of like a natural kind of like habitat kind of thing, where it's like the more natural I can have it, the better. I just like it. It's pretty. But like the boys for right now, until I can find more, have fake plants and everything, which is fine. But it's gravel or rocky kind of sand that is what is also the doom of them in being pets. And people think like, you know, oh, they need substrate because they get stressed out, or, you know, let's make this tank look pretty. And it's like, while you want it to look nice, there are different ways of doing it. Gravel can cause impaction and death because they're swallowing rocks, and it's just going to collect in their system, kind of like a dog where they just go out and eat just random things. They're going to get sick. And they'll eventually die, or they're going to need surgery to get it removed. So the best thing is just get super, super fine sand, like aquarium sand. People that like a bit of color do, what is it, Crayola sand, where it's like you can get them as any kind of color. I know like some people for like the the leucistics I have, they do like red sand or blue or green just to make it like pop with like make it look pretty. It is pretty. It doesn't harm them in any way. There's no harsh chemicals that'll like harm them. So that's another thing that like anything that goes into that tank definitely needs to be researched. So then that just comes down to like really knowing what to 100% put in. Like even walking into PetSmart or Petco, I remember I was out of Prime and I was so irritated because I have two 40-gallon tanks and it's like they sell Prime that's like literally this big. And I'm like, that's like one drop for both of my tanks. Like I can't do that. It takes 4 milliliters in each tank of Prime. And I'm like,
okay, explain Prime.
Prime? I don't even know where I have it down.
What is it? Is that a bacterial culture to inoculate your filters?
No, it's a water conditioner. So basically it takes out any type of ammonia or bad chemicals that might be in your tap water.
Okay.
So I went into the pet store and I was asking them if they had like any type of certain chemicals because I have axolotls and like they kept pushing and pushing and pushing me to like buy these certain things. And I kept trying to kindly explain like I can't have certain chemicals with them. So it definitely like it was getting on my nerves, but me trying to like, you know, be an educator. And I'm like, no, you know, like doing research and like talking to people. I've joined so many groups on Facebook, forums, Caudata. Like there's so many things that I would recommend new beginners doing before even thinking about buying one. Or if you impulse buy one, which some people do, which, you know, I think like a lot of communities should come to terms that impulse buying is never going to go away and you just kind of got to educate appropriately as it goes, as frustrating as it is. But I would say
even the people who are in it do it, and it's like expos are a good example. Like if I go to an expo and I see something that I catches my eye as a snake keeper, I can keep mostly any kind of snake as long as I've got an enclosure for it. So I can impulse buy a snake.
Right.
But should you? No.
Right. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I have this empty such and such gallon tank. Oh, I could put this in here. And it's like, while you can, you shouldn't. It's like that excitement, that adrenaline, like, oh my God, like, it's just like, I'm not for like gatekeeping or like, oh my God, I'm going to bash you. This and that. It is frustrating, especially from like an education standpoint. But I try to educate people where it's like, if people are coming for advice, do not criticize. They're here for a reason. Regardless, they're probably not going to take your advice anyway, because there are those people that ask for advice and then they complain about the advice given because they don't like it or don't think it's right. So you kind of have to just I just explain it as nice as possibly, or I'm like, okay, you know, I hope everything works out, and then I stop commenting because at that point I just lost my patience. But like at stores, it's just like I would definitely say, yeah, maybe like a 3.5, maybe 4. So it depends on really how in depth you're going to go. But like Facebook groups, when I got Casper, have helped me so much. And like, you know, I mentioned that he was a surprise and like, don't be mad. Like, you know, and they were very understanding because it's like, you know, sometimes people just do it as a gift. And it's like, you can't really just stop these things from happening. All you could do is like educate the person appropriately because they're reaching out for help. But I would say just as a whole, their food is cheap. All they do is eat night crawlers or red wrigglers. The babies will eat brine shrimp. Either you can like do the culture yourself at home or you could order them, or black worms. I have yet to start my own culture of brine shrimp, and that's like, they say it's relatively easy. They're like little sea monkeys. I think that's exactly what brine shrimp is sea monkeys.
Right.
I think you're right.
So yeah, I think that's all they are. Like when someone said that to me, and I'm like, you're telling me that when I was younger, I had brine shrimp in my house, and I thought they're actual shrimp, and someone told me that they were sea monkeys.
Yeah.
It just blew my mind. I'm like, how is this even like, how do you keep sea monkeys alive in like these little cage things to take home? I'm like, it just blew my mind. But their food is very cheap. I even started my own worm farm down below. So it's like I can just have my own thing, and then they don't necessarily eat other bugs just because the exoskeletons are too hard for them to digest. I've heard of people doing freshly shed like dubias when they have like the white shells when they're like really, really soft. I just wouldn't recommend it as a whole. I know some people do it like as a treat very once in a blue moon, but I don't like that risk factor of like that what if. I'm like, I would just rather not do it at all.
Now, are they susceptible? I know turtles are susceptible to the flukes and the nematodes that crustaceans carry.
Mhm.
You know, that's why I never allow snails and crawdads and such in with my turtles. Um, and so that's why I like to buy freshly hatched captive bred turtles is what I did years ago.
Mm.
And I'm putting up with parasites from the rescued turtles that pass, like one of the box turtles passed a tapeworm, which I know she probably
Ooh.
got from raiding a mouse nest.
Ooh.
They those that they're the same tapeworms that cats and dogs can pick up from eating rodents. And so I like to shy away from wild caught animals
Yeah.
for that reason. And so I mean, do these have parasites you have to watch out for that could come in, from their food source?
They definitely can. I'm not sure off the top of my hand what parasites. I think like definitely certain parasitic worms they can get. I know through worms I have never really heard of anything happening either with like the bugs, but this is a very controversial topic among the community with fish. You can feed them fish, but they have to be, if I'm not mistaken, live bearing fish. But and shrimp. I remember buying like little cherry shrimp from PetSmart. Stupid me, never again. Um, you want to quarantine any type of live food for 30 days, monitor them for any type of ailments. And then I wound up, I don't know if it was like a hookworm or some type of worm that it had. And you could see it. It was a ghost shrimp. You could see it through its body. And I'm just like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
I just like, granted, thank God they were cheap and not like the cherry shrimp or like any other shrimp that's like, more than $5. But I was so aggravated because I was so excited to give Casper something new because he, like I said, he's just a living decoration. I'm like, maybe this will get him to like move, but yet because he's albino, he's basically borderline blind. So how is he going to see these things anyway? I don't know. I was kind of like, yay, and now I'm like, eh. But I was so happy for nothing. Now it just hit me, and I'm like, why did I do that if he's blind? Like, how is he going to see it? Like, it's wasted money. But they definitely could have parasites if they eat contaminated live bearing food options. So that's why it's frowned upon to give them that. But then also feeding them live food besides the worms is just a general no-go because housing them with any other species is just negative.
Risky. Yeah.
Very, because like even their wild like their wild counterparts, like they have no self-defense. So like fish will just go up to them, they'll bite them. Fish are they're annoying. They'll go up to you, they'll just peck at you, they'll bite your gills off, they'll they'll pester you. So it's like they can cause damage, or especially sucker fish, they can latch onto their slime coats and bite them, essentially ruining their slime coats. Snails too, they can also lead to impaction because of like their
Wow.
hard shells. Yeah, so it's just like they just need to live in a bubble. I told Casper
What
that
do-
the other day.
How
What
do
do
they
they-
live in the wild?
Yes.
This is why. This is why they
Right.
don't.
This is why they die. This is why you are not alive. It's just like when I was doing research on this years ago, and I'm like, why were you invented just to die? I'm like, that is like really like everybody's invented just to like die, but like you literally were born with nothing to like save your life at all, like no defense mechanism. I'm like, okay, you were just born to be cute and weird and slimy, and then okay, see you later. It's so sad.
Well, that this is one thing. As a wildlife biologist, I've mostly studied large terrestrial wildlife. I didn't look into reptiles or amphibians much. It's always upland game animals and whatever. And a lot of people will say, well, I give my dogs a bone because to simulate what the wild canids, the foxes and the coyotes and the wolves. And I go, well, you do realize that we biologists find in the wild young canids that died from lacerated intestines from bone shards.
Right.
Their teeth are just Google wolf yawning, and you'll see worn down teeth, and that they live an average of 8 years in the wild. That means a lot of them are dying young from such things that you think, that the wolf lives as long as my dog and eats all these bones and they're fine. No, that is not the
Right.
case. And so, yeah, it especially with what you're saying is, axolotls, they can breed at 9 months old. And so their replacement makes up for the ones who die at, so much. They don't
Pretty
have
much.
to. They don't have to live
Mhm.
long to keep reproducing and keep the numbers up
Right.
if they didn't have contamination in drying lakes
Right.
and ponds and creeks and whatever. And so, and that's the nastiness of nature.
It definitely.
you know,
It's like if you guys just had that one defense mechanism, I feel like they would be an invasive species because of how much they breed.
yeah,
They can
And
literally
with
breed and breed.
yeah,
with how much they breed, you just know that they're food.
yeah,
That's what they are. They're
Yeah.
food to whatever's
Yeah.
out there because
Yes.
they're having so many babies.
yeah,
And
Exactly. Yep.
none of them are making it. Well, not
yeah,
not many
Right,
of them
right.
anyway.
yeah,
So,
Right.
exactly.
we
It's
did
like-
have a question in chat. Like, you'd
Yep.
think that being in Mexico that they'd need a warmer climate setup, but
Right.
like, so why? How is there water in Mexico that doesn't get above 70 degrees?
That's a good question. So basically, I think I mentioned before the Examilico, their vernal pool, like, or what's left of it, is at a very high altitude. So it's like the water's on the top. It's on the top of a giant mountain. So it's like the water up there is cooler. So basically, that's just because I even wondered that too. That's basically it. It's just like the higher altitude, like the colder the water is up there. I don't
Mhm.
know if it's like shaded now, but I would imagine like back then they're covered in like trees and rubbish and everything that would keep it, and like the rock formations keeping it cool. But I just think the altitude alone and just being high up there is what keeps it cold. Because I even wondered that too. I'm like, how are you in Mexico and your water is really cold?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd think that
Yeah.
room temperature would be fine, and then if it gets a little
Right.
warm, like,
Mhm.
it's okay.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. Some people
Well-
say keeping them at 70 is fine, but I'm like, no,
Yeah.
don't do it.
Well,
I've
it's
had
just like,
this with my guys, but
yeah, one of the lakes and streams here in the Black Hills. When you're up in Custer, you're at a mile high, so Stockade Lake, is cooler than Angostura that's down on the prairie, and then
right,
we have even Sylvan Lake that's even higher, and it tends to run much cooler temperatures. And plus it's shrouded by tall hillsides and tall rocks that it doesn't get as much direct light sunlight as the wide open prairie lakes do. And so yeah, it's so the turtles up there that I follow their growing season is shorter because it takes a lot longer for the ice to leave those lakes compared to our prairie lakes. So
right.
yeah, I could understand. Do you know what the elevation level is of their old habitat?
No, I don't. I should have looked beforehand, but I think there is an article out there that states it, but no, I didn't write that down.
Yeah, because I was wondering, I can't remember what the elevation is of Sylvan, but I think it's up around 6,000 and some, is it?
Wow.
Yeah, it's 6-ish, 7.
Yeah.
7's the highest we have, 7,500, so.
Yeah, so, yeah, interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. So, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I just remembered my question.
Then
I keep
go for
forgetting.
it. Go for it. Because I'm going to go into breeding in
okay.
captivity
Okay.
in like a cycle. That's
Okay.
where I'm headed.
Like I can clean out one of my tanks and totally clean out the filter, but then I add what's called sludge destroyer. It's a bacterial culture to re-inoculate the filters, and they start. You could within 6 hours. They've cleaned up the water is crystal clear again, and instead of having that fresh water bubble because I'm on well water, tested well
Right.
water, and then dirt, and as soon as you put the turtles in there, they're going to dirty it. But boy, that water is clean within hours. And so I didn't
Right.
know if you must have to use something to inoculate your filters when you do a cleaning, or you don't clean your filters that much.
With these filters, basically after they're cycled, you don't have to. So basically starting the cycle is you need an ammonia source. I like, the controlled variable. You shouldn't have like an animal in there when it cycles, but you use an ammonia source and then it starts that whole nitrate cycle. But then once it's established, I know people use Quick Start or like something like Stability, or what is it, Dr. Tim's nitrifying bacteria, where it's, I don't know. I can't like say it's like maybe a gimmick or not, because it's worked for me, and then other times it hasn't, because it's bottled bacteria. You don't know if it's alive or not, or if it's just a selling thing. Basically, when you're cycling, you can use that to put the bacteria in there to start it. But then I know on the back of I think it's both of them, Quick Start and Stability, after every water change, you can put I think so many milliliters of that back into the tank. Basically, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to feed it more bacteria, because there's bacteria in the filter, so it's not in the water. But it'll basically just keep feeding it and making sure it's healthy. But you don't have to, because the bacteria will just breed and grow on itself.
Right.
But with my tanks, unless my filters get really dirty or they poop all over it and it's just gross, like you could, when you do a water change, you can keep a bucket of old water. You could lightly put your filter media in there, squeeze it at least once gently, and then put it back immediately in. So you don't want to sit there and like squeeze it, or rinse it underneath fresh water, because then it'll just kill everything. But yeah, you can add beneficial bacteria. It's not really going to hurt the axolotl. I would definitely look into like what products you're using. I know the 3 that I listed are definitely safe. But no, you don't have to put anything in it, as long as it definitely went through a true nitrogen cycle. It'll be okay.
Yeah. I don't. I just lightly squeeze out. I use sponges, and then and then the filter media stone, and then I also put in some lava stone too that can hold bacteria really well. And
I want to get some of that.
Yeah, it's and then the turtles like to play soccer with that about their tank. So they're usually light lava stones, and one turtle really likes to nudge it from one end of the tank to the next. I had to remove it out of the living room tank because Joel goes, no.
Like, we can't have nice things, guys. Come on now. I'm trying to make this look nice for you, and you're ruining it.
Yeah, it was just too much. I should have recorded them playing soccer with it. But yeah, funny creatures. But go ahead.
So still on the husbandry, actually. How often are you water changing?
I do a water change once a week. I always check my water quality too. I have one of those API freshwater liquid test kits, and I make sure that I check it at least in like the middle of the week to know where my parameters are at. So you want to make sure you have no ammonia, no nitrite, and your nitrate it obviously has to be there in order to be a true cycle. But you want to make sure it doesn't hit like above 40 to 60 parts per million on the chart, because then it can be considered toxic after a while. So if everything is okay, I'll leave it. I'll do a water change once a week, mainly on the weekend, so then I could just clean the whole entire house and mop the floor afterwards. But once a week, or unless like they're like pooping everywhere. Their poop is like dust. Like they'll like, I don't know how they poop this big, but it'll like come out like, I don't know, like a bearded dragon poop, just like a huge poop. And then it's like, I don't know, like they remind me like a cat in a litter box. They kind of just zoom right through it, and then it just breaks apart into dust. So if it's like really like gross or like not aesthetically pleasing to me, I'll quickly like, people use turkey basters to like quickly clean up like the poop particles, and like they'll just discard it. Or you can just, I have one of those, what is it, the Python siphons that connects to your sink.
Right. Yes.
And then I'll just do a quick bottom clean, and then I'll just fill it up if I have to fill it up again. But
now, how much of the water do you take out at each water change? 2/3, half?
I would take maybe a little bit more than half, or especially like if I am busy and I didn't do the weekly water change, I'll definitely take more than half. But usually I take, yeah, about like a half, maybe like 55% of it. So it's like, I don't know if you could see it, but maybe like up to like here,
Okay.
like up to
Okay.
like this line.
Gotcha.
So it's
Okay.
like not too bad. So it's like, so my filters aren't like basically to where my sponge filters are. So it's not like they're going to touch air, and then I'll just fill it back up.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I've got the Fluval U4 filters that I lay down at the bottom, and 2 in each tank, and I mean, and then I draw the water down to about a quarter of an inch above the intake, and they've got intakes on both sides,
Right.
and and then. And then I don't have to unplug the heater. I don't have to unplug the filters. I just take it down, and I do like what you do, take it off the bottom, and
Right.
and then I use a hose that in the winter I drain from siphon from the tanks into the shower. This long hose going from the living room
Right.
to
Oh
the
my gosh.
shower, or
Same.
from the bedroom tanks to the
Mhm.
shower, and then I've had different attachments. And then I use that. I purge the hose, and then after I've purged the hose, then I put it back in the tank, and then fill the tanks with the hose. I don't do buckets, like at all, So
Oh my
it's
God, I used to do that.
We do that for the fish.
Yeah,
Oh.
you get a hose. Get one of those white what they call RV hoses, and
Well, the fish tank is right next to the window.
uh-huh.
So what I should actually start doing is just
Okay.
spewing it out the window and watering the grass with it, because it'd be okay.
That's good fertilizer.
Like, it'd be good for the grass.
Yeah.
Let's be real here.
Yeah, but what about in the winter? What do you do? Or that's
Well, I haven't done that yet. I also have thought about my yard smelling like fish, and
Oh
how
my
much
God.
my dog would love to roll in that. And
Oh.
I'm good on that.
No, see, I take
Gross.
I take the turtle water, and then when I do clean out the filters, like I do that about every. I mean, since I've got 2 filters, each filter is a 65-gallon U4, and then I've got 2 of them in a 40-gallon tank. So you can about imagine that I only have to clean the filters out about once every other month, and
Right.
when I realize that they don't have any more draw, and so when I squeeze out the sponges, just enough so that they're clear enough to have good flow through them, then I put all that brown water on the plants outside, and boy, do I have fast growing shrubs and trees.
Yeah.
I should do that to my house
It-
plants. They're not
it-
looking so good.
It's very good fertilizer for plants.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so what kind of filter are you running? I know you said you have like an air hose that is ran off of a battery, so I'm thinking like the sponge filters, that the air bubbles up through. Is
Yep.
that what you're using then?
Yep, I
Okay.
have one of them. It's not set up to the battery operated one right now, but it's set up to just like a regular air pump. That's that wherever my hand is.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that thing up there. That was embarrassing. I have a sponge filter. That one's my smaller one from when I got Casper. So that one's 20-gallon, but I upgraded to, I think this one's like 60 to 80. It's like one of those dual sponge filters where it has like the little canister at the bottom with the sponge up top and like this giant hose that comes up and it like sprays water through like the top. But I don't remember what brand that is. I got it off of Amazon. It was like some weird off-brand looking sketchy thing from like Wish. It's pretty much, I'm just going for it, I guess. It was a cheap price because some filters I refuse to spend depending on the creature. Like I know turtles definitely need like a good filtration system, but like axolotls, they don't create as much waste as people think that they do. It's like they act like goldfish. Goldfish are gross to me. It's like I'm not like trying to talk junk about like goldfish, but like they are one of like the yuckier end of like their waste is very high. But they don't produce a lot of waste. So it's like sponge filters or like those, what is it, flow valve, like the regular hang on the back filters will do just fine. As long as like the filter, I like to go bigger or like I have double, kind of like what you said, Peggy, where you have like the two. So it's like the extra filtration.
Yeah.
So it's so good. So it's just like mine's, I want to say between them both, maybe 100-gallon filters in there between the two of them. And then I just ordered on Amazon for $20. I got 4 80-gallon sponge filters, and all I have to do is hook them up to the air pump, and that's it. So it's just like they're so cheap and they're so efficient, and it's just like, you know, you don't have to deal with like besides the power outage, but at least they hook up to like the that battery operated pump, because like if a hang on the back filter goes out, what are you plugging that into?
Yeah.
It's so bad. I'm just like, there's something needs to be like invented. Like if I was smart enough, I would definitely try to figure out how to make something efficiently for everyone, because it's like a lot of people take their aquariums very, very intensely, and like there are some people that have like either aquaponics or like those beautiful like landscaped like pieces of art with like beautiful fish in it. And it's like once that filter goes, it's like catastrophe. But yeah, I used to have a flue valve like I hang on the back, and then all of a sudden it just started making these ungodly noises, and like it just stopped working. It stopped. I have taken it apart, I've cleaned it, I don't know why it just left after only like a few years of having it. And I've had the sponge filter in for 5 years, and it's still, there's nothing really going to happen to a sponge filter. You don't have to change like the padding in the back or replace it like you do a hang on the back filter. It just keeps going. It doesn't deteriorate.
A question. The now, do you have the sponge encased in plastic, or the axolotls do not bite the sponge?
Nope, they don't bite it at all. They'll like sit on top of it. So basically it's just like it has a little stand, then like the sponge, and then it has like a little plastic like tube, and then the air tube goes through it to like push the air like through the sponge and like up the that little tube. I think it's just so like the air tube doesn't like pop off or anything. That is, I hate putting air tubes on things. It is so terrible. I busted my fingers trying to put them, and it's like it hurts after a while, because you're just like, how does this tiny little air tube fit over this little air hole? I don't like. My husband will just do it perfectly fine. I'm just like,
I use a pliers and
Oh my
then
God.
and guide it on there. I mean, I feel for you. Yeah.
oh my God, I'm so
I'm
tired.
sorry, I don't get it. I mean, it sucks, but
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Just like I have to replace this one because I think the air tubing that I have on it is too, I want to say like squishy. It's not like the harder tube, and it just keeps, the air keeps blowing them off like the other tube, because I have like the check valve down here and it keeps like popping off. So I think the air pressure with it is too high. So I have to use like a thicker air tube to keep it on. I just haven't been replacing, because every now and again I'll just hear like this really loud like deflating noise, and it's that.
No.
And I'm like, God, if I
Yikes.
didn't realize that, and because it's like, okay, if it's not connected to air, your bacteria is gonna die. And I'm like, I will be damned. This happens in my cycle that I have been so patient for. I would cry. Oh my God.
Yeah. I had to go to the in-tank filters instead of the on the backs, because we have power outages so much out here in the forest, because trees will fall on the electrical line, and then once that on the backs would drain out, then they would run dry. A lot of them can't prime themselves, and I was afraid that the motor would get hot, it could start fire, blah blah blah. And so now when the electricity goes out, it's just the filters stop, and then when it comes back on, the filters just start up again. I don't have to worry about a dry filter motor running and overheating. And now that I'm a stay-at-home retired turtle and puppy mom, it's like, I bought this. It's called Tidal 110. It's an on-the-back filter, but the motor is in the tank. It instead of the motor being on the outside of the tank, it's on the on the inner draw tube, and so it's suspended down in the water, so it primes itself. You plug it in, and it goes.
Wow.
You don't have to add water to it for it to prime. It just takes the water right from the tank. And I haven't put it up because you have to put the level of the water of the tanks to about only 3 inches below the rim, and I just haven't done that yet. I want somebody. I'm such an over engineering person. I want somebody to go into my crawl space and tell me how much weight I can have in this aquarium before
Oh my God.
I raise the water on my 75-gallon aquarium to use this this filter. So yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not causing
Nothing
problems.
breaks in it. I just put in
Right.
this gigantic piece of driftwood. I bought it from what is it? Slither and Swim. It's like a few towns over. They're like an exotic shop. I bought this gigantic piece of driftwood, and then I went to go put it in the tank, and I'm like, it's on a stand, and I'm like, this is gonna fall through the stand. And I kept asking my husband, I'm like, oh my God, why to buy this? Is it like it's going to ruin something? It's gonna fall. It's gonna crash everything. Everything's gonna die or like get electrocuted. Like I'm like, why am I? He's like, it's fine. I'm like, why am I like this? Or it's like, I have rocks, like river rocks in their tank. And I'm like, Casper is going to like shoot off like a rocket and bump into this rock and it's going to ricochet into the glass. And there goes all my life on the floor.
I wish Joe was here to. I'm going to have to play this part over because he goes, oh, it's not just you.
Oh my God.
No,
I'll just sit
it's
here and
not.
I'm just like, my anxiety, just like watching them, like, because sometimes they'll get spooked if I walk by because it's like they're not expecting something. Like
Right.
people say that they could see. I think Casper's just blind because he's just albino. Feeding him, I have to drop something on top of his head in order to eat it. The other babies, I'll just throw worms in there; they'll find it. He's just special. He's a special case. But like, you walk by him and he instantly like freaks out. I don't know if it's like the shadow or the sudden like vibrations on the tank, but he'll like blast off into everything. And I'm like, great, now I got to check him when he comes out. Did he cut himself? Did he lose a limb? And I'm just like, stop. God, he's and like the other ones are just there perfectly fine. I'm like, it's just you. Stop.
Well, that's
extra.
why. Yeah, Joel feels so bad when the turtles are just totally zoned out and sleeping and basking under that, and then he'll go over by the tank quickly, and we have his camera storage underneath one of the tanks, and he'll go over there real quick to grab one of his camera bags, and then the turtles will all of a sudden wake up and freak out, and he goes, oh, I'm so sorry. It's like, oh,
Right.
whatever.
You would think that like all these animals would get used to it. It's just like, you know, we are here. Like, you do this every day. I walk past you 10 million times. I have like my youngest kid, like I'm trying to teach him not to, but he'll go up and like smack the tank real quick. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, please don't do that.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I think he's just, I don't know, but like he's good with it now, but I'm just like, please stop touching it. But like, he won't freak out for that, but like, he'll freak out if I walk by it. I'm just like, all right, like, whatever, Casper. Like,
That's that eighth of a brain cell.
for real.
Are you talking about the axolotl or the child?
The axolotl,
Oh, Axolotl.
for sure.
Okay. Yeah, just don't let the child take a rock and see how strong the aquarium is.
No.
One of my friends.
All the
had that
toys are
happen.
like in his room. I even said that for a reason. I'm like, both kids, I'm like, anything that's hard or ball shaped or that could be thrown needs to stay in a room. I'm like, you can have stuffed animals out here or like anything squishy, but then it's like my son threw a dinosaur at the TV and it broke that. So I'm like,
Ooh.
toys need to stay away. Like, you can have a playroom. We can keep the door open. No toys are. They wind up out here anyway, and then it like sets my radar off. I'm just watching them. I'm like, please.
Yeah, there's one toy that I don't let him shake around the aquariums. It's one of those big, long, knotted, thick rope things. It's like, yeah, he can't play with that near the aquariums.
No.
Yeah, but yeah. So
So do they have a cycle? You talked about breeding and how the male will grab the female and run him across his sperm, which is very interesting.
yeah.
Weird.
So do you have to, like, I'm sure you have to cycle them to get them to do that. So what is the cycle? Is it colder? You're already keeping them at 68. So are you dropping them to like 40 or what?
Pretty much like kind of like other reptiles too, where like, you know, when you change their water or change their habitat or clean it, they automatically like have different behaviors. So I noticed with my two boys, especially like they didn't do it during the winter. So I wonder if it's like a seasonal thing too. I realized because they didn't do it all winter until like, you know, spring actually happened when you do a water change and their tank is already like 50 something. And then it's like, it'll be like 48 by the time I'm done and it's cold. Their metabolism will slow down a little bit, but they'll still be okay. But then they're all over each other. I'm like, these are two males just dropping sperm cones and like bothering each other. And it's like they're both trying to do it at the same time. So it's like they're both dropping sperm cones, but they're both trying to push each other at the same time. Wow. And it's like I find myself just watching them and I'm just like, like I don't know if it's like mildly inappropriate that I'm kind of like staring at you and I'm like, but it's like the science part of me. I'm like, what are y'all doing? I'm like, Casper, he's too young for you, but you all are both boys, but like I can't say much, but like come on now. But like I noticed like I want to pair them with their own male and female. I just got to find that right one, but I've seen other breeders too where it's just like that certain time of year, especially like when the amphibians start to wake up around New England at this time or like other areas when it starts to like thaw out, they'll all start to mate where like, you know, the water temperature drops and like they just come to life and they'll be all over it.
Yeah. And that's I noticed that you know, one of my cats was up near my control board and I just kind of ignored it. And then by the next morning, I noticed the two girls in my larger tank were starting to do the mating dance with one another. And I'm like, I think that cat turned off the heater. And sure enough, I went back there and she must have got caught or something, because to pull that plug out of that control bar, it's like, or she just pulled it out a little bit. It's like, what did she do? And the heater was off, and it only took you know, about I don't know, 18 hours, and the two female turtles wanted to mate, you know, and the tank had only dropped down to what was it, about 69, and yeah, and so a lot of, I guess I've never had to worry about brumating the turtles to get them to breed.
Right.
All you have to do is just give them some chilled temperatures and boom, they're at it.
It sounds like axolotls are the same way, just a little bit colder than normal, and they're ready to go. So it's not even like a huge drop. It doesn't seem anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like just sticking your hand in there when it's freakishly cold. It's like that painful, like chill, like your arms just hurt. And I'm like in there rearranging and I'm like trying to like, because it's like I just cleaned the tank, now there's sperm everywhere, and I gotta clean. Now I feel obligated to clean it again because it's gross. And then I'm like, what's the point? They're just gonna do it again. But then it's like my friends will come over. They're like, oh, what's this? I'm like, we're not talking about it. Okay, like, I just cleaned it before you came here, and they had other plans. So I was like, good thing that my females aren't in there.
So then, I mean, can't you vacuum that up with hardly taking any water out? Or
yeah, I probably could, but then it's like since it's a 40-gallon and like they drop loads of them. Oh, it's just I'm just like, nah. I'm like, whatever, guys.
And so what happens if you take like a really fine fish net to the sperm sacs? I mean, do they break apart?
I think it's like relatively, no, they don't break apart, but it's like they fly away, I guess, very easily, or swim away very easily. It's kind of like trying to like pick up their poop particles. It just kind of disperses everywhere. I probably could. I never thought about using a net. I tried turkey basting, but it's like you have to sit there, keep like sucking it up, and you have to put it in the garbage, or like it was just so time consuming. So now I just kind of leave it there, or unless like I don't know if it'll like harm my water quality or not. So I try to clean it up as much as possible because I don't know if it'll like decompose or anything, or like ruin the water quality.
You guys are going to have a talk amongst yourselves. I've got a puppy that's whining at the door.
Okay.
Right on. We'll kick you out to the green room and put you back in when you get back. Awesome. Where were we? I totally lost it. Totally lost it.
They're breeding with their temperature.
You know, I think we've pretty much... Is there anything else you have on axolotls? Because I would still like to hit on your education stuff, and we are running out of time.
I would say I pretty much hit everything, you know, like if people wanted to buy one, I would definitely recommend doing intensive research, not just like, you know, how you could just put something on Google and the first article pops up, just read it. I would definitely do in depth, definitely go into YouTube, watch the nitrate cycle. Just make sure everything is safe, join forums and everything. One thing that I really suggest to have on hand was medical necessities. So I'm not saying like, you know, be a veterinarian or whatever. If it's definitely something that should be seen by a vet, don't try to do it yourself because you can actually wind up killing your animal in the process. There's
In
actually
anything, just not axolotls. That goes for everything.
exactly. So like there is some stuff with axolotls that you could definitely do yourself that because exotic vets are very expensive, but I never recommend, you know, doing anything by yourself or unless like you know what you're doing or it's like not surgeries, not like intensive care, but treating fungus for axolotls is something that you could do yourself at home. It's not like you're going to kill them or unless you do it for a very long period of time. So Casper will get fungus very once in a blue moon. It can happen if your water quality is off just a little bit or if the temperature fluctuates on and off. He's only had it like once or twice within the 5 years that I've had him. But you can get plain black caffeinated tea and you could brew it like you would like you're having a cup of tea. Let it cool and get super cold. You would have to tub them in, I don't know, like a Tupperware container or any type of tub. You would put them in it with cold dechlorinated water. So like your water conditioner, like Prime. Add the cold tea into it and you would let them sit in it for about 15 minutes, no more, or it will cause circulation problems and they'll start to have problems. They'll die if they sit any longer. Basically what it does is it clears the fungus in a very natural, easy way and not invasive. Like people are like, oh yeah, use salt baths, but salt baths on axolotls when they breathe through their skin, think about it. It's gonna like pouring salt on an open wound. It's gonna burn. So tea baths are fantastic. You could do it 2 to 3 times a day for tops 15 minutes. I've done it with Casper, maybe like twice that one day he had it and it was gone. I wouldn't recommend taking a Q-tip and scraping it because they're very fragile on their filaments and like their slime coats. It'll fall off on its own, or even if you tub them in cold water, sometimes it just falls off even just by you taking them out of the tank. But Indian almond leaves are another fantastic thing that I really recommend to have in your tank. They are leaves that do the same thing that black tea would, but they don't do anything to their circulation system. So basically, they release tannins, which is a chemical that can help with antibacterial and antifungal properties. So it's like you keep them in the tank. Your tank will turn like a tingy, like my girls have driftwood in it. Driftwood had tannins in it. So it'll release that chemical and it helps keep them healthy. So it like you won't really have bacterial infections or fungus, and it helps aid in it. Not saying that it's going to be like 100% you won't get it. It just helps keep it at bay. But it might mess with your pH a bit. So you want to have like I have activated aragonite coral substrate in mesh. Definitely keep it in mesh, or you can get like the very, very fine sand so they don't eat it. They're very dumb. Anything that's smaller than their heads, they will put in their mouth. Anything. So it's like any small rocks, pebbles, any other tank mates. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention that's very important. Never house 2 different genders together or different sizes, because obviously 2 different genders are going to mate nonstop. And if you don't want that, then you can definitely, people say it's inhumane, but I would rather people do this if they're not ready than rather take on the responsibility of possibly like 1,000 eggs, because it's not cheap. You can gather them up and put them in a Ziploc bag and put them in the freezer. That is the most humane way to do it, rather than putting more pets into the pet trade that shouldn't be there when it's already a humongous problem. But in the different sizes, the big ones can eat the small ones. If there's definitely, even if there's like an abundance of food or not, like the big ones, they'll just wind up eating like the small ones. Like Casper, I want to say is about 12 inches. When I got my two little ones. They were like the size of my pinky. I would never recommend
Wow.
putting in. Yeah, I would never recommend putting in a fully sized adult with babies because they'll wind up just eating them.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely keeping some medical things on hand for fungus, not so much bacterial infections or parasites. That's something you should definitely go to a veterinarian for. And even if they let's just say they cut themselves or lose a limb, I wouldn't say that's not something necessarily you would have to go to a vet for, or unless like it's actually looks really really bad. You can the Indian almond leaves help heal over like any bacterial infections that might start and keep it clean. So you can keep them in your tank. It's just something that's definitely beneficial. Like I keep a tea bag box I have an Axolotl tote bin where it's just, I opened it the other day. I have an ungodly amount of stuff in there, but it's always good to be prepared. I have like tea bags in there. I got like all these extra air tubes. I got extra filters and like all these weird random extra things. So I would definitely make sure that you at least have one of those things. And even for fungus, you can boil the Indian almond leaves the same way you would tea and use that if you don't have black caffeinated tea.
Interesting.
I've heard like a certain type of moss, Java moss. Is that it? Yeah, that has similar properties as Indian almond leaves. Have you found that
Yeah.
research as well? Okay. Your reptile arc. Let's touch on this real quick here. Before we get going, what are you doing? What are your plans? What are you actually keeping besides axolotls? Because we've talked for 2 hours on axolotls. Yeah. What's going on over there?
So my plan is, for right now, I've been basically just doing extensive research on how to actually like execute this plan, like get it going, because I was in college for years, and then it's just like spending thousands of dollars just to get prerequisites done, and then going into like herpetology or field work. It's just like, to own my own business, why do I need all these zoo degrees or all these certain things, when it's just like all these animals that I'm going to wind up keeping aren't things that I'm going to learn in college. Like I would love to like go to college for it, of course, but it's just like, I've spoken, to the herpetocultural guys on their podcast. I love them.
Justin
Awesome.
Smith and Jacob Bratz and Phil Wolf. We've had 2 of the 3 on. Bill Bradley.
Right.
We've had 3 of the 4 on. My bad.
Right. They're awesome. I really enjoy listening to them. They're so funny too. But I spoke to them and I said, I'm going to be honest, like going to college for something that I'm looking for just doesn't seem it. And especially being with someone that has like a learning disability with math, and doing all of that math just to get out of prerequisites and then going to transfer over to UConn just wasn't it for me. And then they were like, if it's something that you're really interested in, half the people that are really up there and reputable and great people have done it themselves through countless amount of research, countless amounts of definitely mistakes and great fortune and learning off of other people and trial and error and owning pets. He's like, this is something you're really good at, like you can definitely do it. And I was like really proud that like, they were like, you can definitely do it. Of course, a degree would make anyone look better, but like, there's no point in college for certain things.
Well, and I, when I went to college in the 70s, I went 75 through then the spring of 80, and I got 2 degrees. But did I learn anything of any particular one species in depth? We're mostly taught about the broad concepts, of habitat control, and then once you get the job and you're in the field, is when you're going to be studying the species that where you're hired, that particular county or state. Then you start really researching the species. It's once you're out there in the field,
Right.
but just like I'm working with these biologists that are tapping into we hobbyists to help them with censusing, and because college doesn't give you time to really get into the nitnoids of one particular species. we may study them out in the wild, but we don't have, then what do we do, when we bring them into captivity? I mean, that it takes experience.
Right. It's like, how exactly am I going to take care of this thing? Like, if I
Right.
did all of this and now I'm here with this, like, but what exactly do I do with it?
Right. Yeah. And so then with your reptile and amphibian center, what are your plans?
My plans are basically to, my husband and I are basically going to do our education ourselves, join a bunch of groups and societies to learn. I basically know bits and pieces of pretty much almost everything, but I know I can learn more in depth, especially like depends on like, what I want in my shop. Cause we want like, like a nice mom and pop shop where it's like you have like your well-bred, health tested. I go for, of course, color is a very important thing in the hobby, but health comes to us first and then colors later. So we want to have like a variety of different things. Maybe like, I don't believe in I don't believe in like the levels. I don't believe like, oh, this one's easier than this. You should get this because it's easy. It basically comes down to, like I said, your research, because a leopard gecko isn't easy to take care of for some people.
Right. I've said it before. You need to keep what you want.
Exactly.
But you also need to know what you want is. So like if you want a scrub python, that thing's going to be mean and try to bite you. And when it's 13 foot long and coming at you, are you going to want it?
Are you gonna be prepared for it?
That's it.
Exactly.
So, I get that.
Exactly. So basically we're going to have, I guess you want to say, certain levels of people, like, we're going to have like, your bearded dragons, your leopard geckos, some ball pythons. I'm one of those people that kind of wants to shy away from those because to me they're very common. That's why I tend to not want to go towards that route, but I will have a few because I know people want them. But my main focus is I really enjoy carpet pythons and monitors. So I kind of want to gear towards, I'm a psycho. Like I want an emerald boa. I don't know. Like
you hear that, Matthew? You're a psycho.
Apparently.
I'm so bad.
Yeah.
My husband just bought this enclosure, and I'm like, I'm putting an Aki in that. He's like,
heck yeah.
I'm just like, they're the first door because I've never had a monitor before. So we're going to start slowly buying supplies and doing more research. I've researched them before, but it's like, I haven't done it in a while. So I want to like revamp like my brain with it and then slowly buy things and then buy, hopefully go to an expo if I can find them in an expo. It's very hard for around here, but basically I kind of want to have a little bit of everything, maybe some kind of like more exotic things, but make sure that the animals come from captive bred, not wild caught. I want to make sure that like I'm not feeding into taking away from wild populations, because the whole point I want to make is like the animals that I have or I get sent to me need to be captive bred. I don't want to be harming the wild caught, because it's like that's the whole purpose that I feel like a lot of the herp community is trying to do, is breed these rare certain things to have so you could stop taking them from the wild, which seems to be the humongous problem. So that's one of the factors that we want to do. We live in Connecticut, but we don't want to start it here. The laws here are very dumb when it comes to owning certain things. A lot of the monitors that I want are illegal here. My end goal, going to sound crazy, is a black throat monitor. I'm obsessed. But I know, and I can admit it, that I'm nowhere near ready for that. And I refuse to buy any animal that I know that I'm not prepared for. Just like you said before, where it's like, are you ready for it to like, attack you at any point? Where it's like how some animals, they change from like going outside into regular sunlight and they go wacko, or like, so it's like lots of things. And if I'm not willing to think about these questions, or if I have a what if, or if I'm scared, I'm not getting it. So in my shop, we'll have like a variety of, different types of terrariums. I want to stay bioactive for as much as I can, because I like the natural aspect. But of course, like if people want the more simple setups, but still up to par to where an animal can thrive and not survive, which is great. Basically just educate them as best as possible. I plan on having like educational packets, not the silly obnoxious ones you see in like Petco, like in depth, like Oh my God, those things, just reading a savanna monitor, it's like, oh, it feeds meat and this and that. I'm like, you feed a savanna monitor a diet of meat and they're going to die. They're going to get fatty liver disease and obese and they're going to die.
Mhm.
And it's just like people, like, even it just blew my mind that, like, a 3 to 4 foot monitor can survive on bugs. It's crazy.
That's all they live on, and they're $30 a piece. So, which is
Wow.
not okay, because they're all
They're-
wild caught. They're all
I was about to say,
imported.
because they're not bred in captivity.
Right.
Exactly. I think I've only seen one successful dude out in Texas that bred them. And that
think
was his only clutch within like a decade.
I think McCurley's bred them.
I thought
Kevin up at Nerd.
Camp Cannon is breeding some monitors, but I can't remember which species. Hasn't he?
I don't know.
I thought he had some.
So,
but-
are you looking into venomous for your arc, or?
See, that's such a hot topic with me.
It is.
It is so this is
my
another reason
favorite
why I
topic.
don't want to live in Connecticut, because obviously, which I understand laws and prohibited for certain things in certain states for certain reasons. I'm not going to sit here and argue with laws that do make sense, and then you have some that are just dumb. Like, I think certain monitors are illegal here because one escaped and it attacked a child. So it's like, I can understand that, but at the same time, that's not something that a whole community should be punished for. It's kind of
Right.
like,
One idiot did something wrong, and
right.
How
So it's
big
like,
a monitor was it? that
I think it
attacked
was an
its child?
Asian water monitor.
so 4 to 6
So-
feet.
Ooh.
Yeah, so it was pretty big. I believe it was one of those. This was years ago, but so it's like, I understand, especially me having young children, I would definitely be very pissed off that happened. But we're looking at West Virginia, where they have no laws, none. I contacted. My thing is, especially because I want my business to thrive, I always email the state's wildlife, fisheries, the deep, whatever it takes to understand the animal laws, get them all. Like, I need to know them all, especially the gray area. Because in Connecticut, I was just told by this exotic guy down at Slytherin Swim, he was like, yeah, you can get black throats in Connecticut. You just have to be in a certain county. And I'm like, please don't tell me that. Like, that's one of the lizards that I want. Do I want it now? No. But the fact that is, I thought it was illegal. He's like, yeah, just like some of the big snakes are illegal in Connecticut, but in some counties they're legal. And I'm like, how does that make sense?
That doesn't make sense.
It's weird. I think Burmese and reticulated pythons are illegal here. Like the big
Yeah.
ones.
because
Well,
usually
that-
wildlife
That
laws
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
though, because they
wildlife
don't
laws-
live.
Right.
They can't live there.
so wildlife laws are state laws.
Oh my God. Just
So-
like I was talking to my
Right.
husband,
No,
I'm
I'm
like, please
with you
tell
on
me
that,
if
Peggy.
any lizard, we have one species of wild lizard here, and that's the 5-line skink. That's the 5-line, I think, 5-line skink is the only lizard we have. And I'm like, that you can't even see the thing. Does it even exist? I have no idea. I've seen pictures of them, but in my freaking all these years of life, I've never seen one. But like, it's just in West Virginia, the only thing that I found unfortunate, which I understand, you are not allowed to keep any type of native species at all. It's prohibited, which I do agree with because they want to preserve their wildlife, and I completely respect it. But it's like, sometimes it's like,
And then you got Tennessee right there, which
Right.
will only allow you, venomous wise, to keep native things.
right.
So yeah, in
Oh.
Tennessee, venomous wise, you're only
ve-
allowed to
venomous wise,
keep native, and you're allowed
Okay.
to keep native species as well. But like, they really strictly allow you to only do native things, and they're like,
Right.
yeah, no, they push more for that because if it
For
gets
all-
out in
Okay,
Tennessee, yeah.
Okay.
Right, because
So
if it
just-
gets out, it's not really harming anything.
And
It's just
yeah,
burned
it's just
there.
gonna go
Yeah.
and live its life and be fine. So
Okay.
And then you have like
um,
Florida, which I really,
it's
Yeah.
crazy laws.
but like
yeah,
with
Florida's
me, it's
changing
like,
their laws just
Yeah.
this week. They just changed a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
yeah, Florida's a hot mess. I can't.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of US ARC stuff going out on that. Make sure.
Oh yeah,
you're
I've been trying to
US
follow
ARC.
it, but I'm a member of US ARC as well, but like I've been trying to follow it, but I'm trying to let it die down a little bit so I can actually read it, because there's a lot of like, especially US ARC Florida, like there's like a lot of back and forth. So I like to read it when it's all done for the night, and then follow up on the next day. But like with the native species, it's like, it is upsetting, but like, someone told me for my program, you could obviously do PowerPoints and stuff, because my educational program, I want to basically, it's going to be basic, because I'm not a college professor. I'm not going to get deep down and be like, yeah, I'll do anatomy and physiology, behavior, but I'm not going to be like, okay, this vein does this thing to the brain and this and that. So
Yeah.
it'll be a program for people of all ages, even children to adults. I want to basically preserve wildlife conservation and help promote a healthy biodiversity. We can do, I was thinking, like, obviously we're going to have to sign waivers, because if you're going to come out on a nature hike, you're going to sign a waiver in order to go, because I'm not going to be responsible for what happens to you or your children or everything. Like, I'm going to cover myself. And then obviously, I want to promote healthy lifestyle for children, like erase that negative stigma, especially you don't know what it is, you don't touch it. Like, I knew like a lot of people grew up in that time where, like, especially myself, I'm going to go out and I'm going to touch this, but it's just like my family wasn't like, keen on like what reptile species or like what venomous is this and this and this. I tell my children, I'm like, if you see a snake in our yard, do not touch it. I don't care if you know what it is. I said, you better look with your eyes and not your hands, and you can come get me so like I can properly identify it myself and we can talk about it. And it's like with me, it's like, I'm not just gonna like run after it and like try to catch it. It's like, if I can like, go up to it and it's gonna let me pick it up, I'll pick it up. Like my husband just saved a garter snake when he was doing lawn work, and like I picked it up and I held it, showed my kids, and I was explaining like what they were, and like they were very invested in it. But basically I kind of want to have it a hands-off nature walk. And like basically I heard of people learning more when they're more hands-on, more out into nature. They'll have like a better experience at learning it rather than a PowerPoint. So it's like, I want to have like arts and crafts for kids, and like if I can, I'm going to use my own shop animals as ambassadors. Exactly. So it's like, okay, so it's like today's segment, we're going to learn about bearded dragon care or leopard gecko care, and like we'll have them in like a tank, and like we'll talk about it, answer any questions, and like prepare and set people up for success. Not just like the basic thing, be like, okay, like you have any questions, we're going to answer them, like about like their husbandry or their brumation period or lighting or substrates and diets. Like I want to make sure that I can basically explain it in a way that a child can understand it to an adult standpoint. Because it's like, how children are. It's like they want them. As soon as they see it, they're like, I want that.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't blame them, but it's like, I want to do it. So it's like the parents get the most out of it, but the kids are also enjoying it. So it's like, I want to make educational packets for them to take home for like any animal that they bring home. So it's like they can, get the in-depth search and be like, I'm not your research. You definitely need to go home regardless if you take this packet or not. I want to make sure that you're setting your animal up for success. And I spoke to my husband about this, and I said, I want to have a rule that says, if you buy these animals for me and you can no longer take care of them, please bring them back.
Yeah.
I am not going to sit here and judge you. I understand life happens. I understand finances happen. Or if you're like, okay, I simply really just don't like it. Whatever it is, I'll respect you enough, and I will appreciate that you bring them back. And someone that would be willing to want them will want them. So like, I don't want people like setting themselves up for failure or ruining their life more, or let alone putting the animal in danger. And basically we'll do bioactive lessons. I was even just saying like, once we get that far, because I know it's expensive, like do like those tiny like little praying mantis bioactive enclosures that are like $40. If people want to come to like learn about a bioactive setup, we can get a bunch of supplies and we can learn how to do it. It's like pretty much almost the same for every bioactive enclosure, minus a different kind of substrate. The layering is pretty much the same. You mix it up, but just basically teaching people how to do things properly, because I feel like groups and forums and stuff give you such different information. It's like even what I say is going to be completely different from what so-and-so says. I won't talk down on especially someone that's done something more than me, but like, when something is very wrong, regardless if you've been in it for a while. Just like I some guy told me that I needed to go back to school because I told him that he was complaining about his bearded dragon having metabolic bone disease. But I told him that it doesn't seem like he's getting the proper diet, or, you know, he's not getting the vitamins that he needs in his food. You know, he needs a wide variety, and you're keeping him in a 20-gallon tank with no substrate. And I said, that's not really acceptable for a bearded dragon. They need like 100-gallon or more tank.
Yeah.
And then people are like, 40 is fine. And I'm like, for a juvenile, I'm like, okay. And he was like, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. And I'm like, listen, like, my age has nothing to do with this, but it just dinged in my head. I'm like, I'm not here to judge or to bash. I'm just simply here to be like, hey, I'm trying to help you with your problem. But if you're going to lowball me and, you know, make fun of me, then why did you bother asking for help with your animal?
Can it survive in a smaller box? Yes.
Right.
Should
That's
it?
like me.
No.
That's like me.
Can
putting
you
my
survive in a
axolotl
smaller
like
house?
5
Yes.
gallon. Right. It's like, you know, like, let me just live in a porta potty or something. I don't know. It's like, and then I just want to like make sure that everyone is set up for like success. Like, I'm going to have like we're going to set up the rooms to where it's like ecosystem. So it's like, you know, the jungle-esque ones are in here. You got your desert ones in here. So like the ambient temperatures, I don't have to worry about the fluctuation in the heat and the humidity. Everything is like the same. Yeah, and then with the venomous species that you mentioned, West Virginia, you can have anything you can even imagine. I thought about it, but with me having young children and not knowing where my property is going to be at the moment, I don't know if I want to take that gamble. And I can admit, I want people to admit that more, that venomous species definitely is not for the faint of heart. They're not just for your basic, oh, I had a snake, so let me go get this. No, it's not. Just like I tell people, there is no such thing as a beginner animal, excluding venomous species. They're not something to joke with. Their behavior is completely different. Some of them are just so irrational and just lash out for no reason. Like you can look at it and it's already like freaking out. It's like, okay.
They know they can hurt you.
Right.
They know they can hurt you.
Yeah.
And
so
they're not afraid to.
No.
Yeah.
Because, and that's just it. Other than that, they're a normal snake. I mean, other than they know they can hurt you.
Well, and I have never had a bull snake or a garter snake come, you know, I sit on it, you know, I look around, I sit on a rock, there's no snake around, I'm eating or I'm working on set and I'm doing these things, and all of a sudden I hear this slithering, and then I look down and a snake has come to me and has curled up and about to strike. That has only happened to me with the rattlers. It doesn't happen to me with the bull snake. They moose, you know, they leave when you walk into an area.
Bull snakes hide a lot though. They do really well. Like mine, if you pull off the hide, if you lift the hide on them, they are mad at everything. So, which I mean, I'm happy about, but anyway, Peg, right. No, they just want you to go away.
Right. Just like I tell my son, like, you know, all they want to do is live. And then he's like, oh, but like people kill them. And I said, yes, because they're very misunderstood. And I said, if you see a snake and it's angry, back away, leave it alone. Mm-hmm. Don't be touching it. Don't be trying to kill it, because if you try to kill it, it's going to defend itself and you're going to hurt yourself. And then I'm like, you know, especially we have timber rattlers and copperheads here. They're more up. Yeah, they're more up in the mountains. But I have never seen one. But we go hiking a lot. And I like to move rocks and stuff, but I don't let my children, especially now since they're actually coming out of like their hibernation stage, I don't let my son, you know, go moseying on into like the woods when we hike, because I'm like, anything can be in here. And I have a snake hook for that purpose. So it's like, just like I don't ever put my hands underneath rocks or anything. Like I wind up like using like the other end of the stick and moving things around. I'm just like, no, you don't.
Well, and a little baby timber curled up under a leaf, you can just step on that, and that's it. I mean, and you're bit. I tell
my son, I'm like, it takes literally one bite to literally end your life, depending on the species. I'm like, some literally give you 15 minutes to live. Bye.
And there's also a lot between living and dead, and
Yeah.
you get bit by a venomous snake, and you're going to be somewhere between living and dead, and it's not going to be a great time.
Yeah.
And then I'm
yeah.
like, and then let's just say, you do survive, and then you have everlasting issues neurologically half the time.
Or you lose your thumb, or,
Right.
you're
Right.
risking a whole bunch if you get bit.
Right.
Like 100%, a whole bunch. It's not just, oh, it can't kill me, whoop-de-doo. No, you still could lose a finger.
Right. It's not like a hognose where they're rear venomous. Like that maybe make you a little inflamed, but
Right.
not that.
No,
Not
that's
that.
why when people ask me, like, if all of your turtles became venomous, what would you do? I go, bye.
That's such a weird question.
Bye.
Those what if questions are so interesting. They're like, what if? I'm like, but in my logical mind, I'm like, but it can't. But I wouldn't own it if it was. But like, I am very skeptical on that because I know I would never be ready, and I don't want to take that gamble with my life. And I know being nervous around a snake like that is not going to save my life or make that snake's life very enjoyable. So
And the second
let's just
you're
say,
nervous,
like,
it's going to make the snake nervous,
Right.
and now you're putting yourself even in more
Exactly. Yeah.
danger, and it's,
let's just say I was like one of those, snake people that has like all these years experience and degrees. It's like the snakes that I would probably own don't even come from the US. Like I would love a gaboon if I could have any animal.
Who wouldn't? But
I would-
that's the one that,
Right.
you shouldn't even, like, why...
I would
Yeah,
never.
why?
You're bit, you're bit, and you're bit, and you're
Yeah.
done. Like,
Why?
that's
Yeah.
it.
Why?
Unless you
Exactly.
have anti-venom on hand,
Right.
like,
And
you're
that's another
losing your
thing.
arm. They're
The
cutting your
shelf
arm
life
off when
for
you get to the
anti-venom
hospital.
isn't that long. So it's
And
like, how
it's
am I supposed? It's
Thousands
expensive.
of dollars. Yes, thousands of dollars.
Right.
Anyway,
And it's like,
I should wrap up and do our closing questions here before we carry on for another
Yeah.
hour and a half, because I know we can. I
Yeah.
can see that. Anyway, did you have any other axolotl related questions, Peggy, before
No,
we jump forward here?
No, I think I want to do more research, so I know I'm curious. There was a few things that we touched upon, mostly about their wild situation that I want to look into. It just it sounds like a sad story.
It
like,
is.
take away Minecraft from your children, guys. My son has still yet to find them, but he's like,
Oh,
oh,
man.
my friend told me that they're in Minecraft. I'm like, well, guess what? You already have axolotls, and we're not getting more.
I told my kid, I'm like, come up with any questions you need for axolotls, and I will ask them. And he's like, how do they regrow their legs? I'm like, well, I'll ask that. But and you touched on it, but
Oh,
the answer is science
right.
doesn't really even know.
I've got a video
They
for
don't.
you.
I forgot
So-
to mention a cool fact too.
Oh, go for it, real quick, and then my closing
real quick.
questions.
So there's that Casper is a perfect example, and I'm kind of mad I didn't set up my blue light beforehand. He is a GFP, so which means he has green fluorescent protein in his
Oh
body.
wow!
So if you put on a certain light, it has to be safe, or else you'll like wind up burning them and like harming their eyes. He glows
Wow!
green.
Wow!
So basically, why this happens is in order to learn about their limb regeneration and about like they can inject. It came from jellyfish, so they got my brain just. They inject certain parts of the body with this green fluorescent protein that came from jellyfish. So basically what it does, it's like a bioluminescent that just lights them up. So it's like if you want to put it through their circulatory system and then like cut off parts of their heart, you could see it coming back, and like the protein will go through everything. Or it's like you want to put it in their brain, see where their nervous system is at and how it works, and like basically keep cutting off their limbs and like learning how it regenerates back, because the glow, either glow or green protein is what I get. Like you can use either or, but basically because they used it in science so much that now it's actually considered a trait. Like you could breed them now and they can have green fluorescent protein within their clutch of eggs, like Casper. He's an albino,
wow.
so it's like you could sit here and look at him and you could see his little tinges of green. There's tons of them that have the GFP trait in them. I find it very cool that that's originated from science and like growing back their limbs. Basically, it's like their limbs grow back from like, you know, you cut them off and it's like, okay, they grow back basically because they're in neoteny, which is basically like their larva stage forever. So they think that it's coming from basically the cells that come from being an embryo, like how from like
stem cells, yes.
Stem cells, yes. So it's like they're trying to figure that out, and they don't create scar tissues with like their macrophages and everything. Like they don't have any, they don't scar, they just completely regenerate. Unlike us, it's like, okay, if we lose a limb, you know, we have that scar tissue, we're not going to grow our leg back. They don't. So it's like still an ongoing research that they're trying to figure out. And I just thought that was, it blew my mind once I figured out Casper was a GFP years ago. I did so much research on it, and I was like, that's why they do that. That's why he glows, and that's where it came from. It's just now it's just a trait that floats around everywhere.
Wow.
So, if you could keep anything, extinct, not extinct, size doesn't matter, money doesn't matter, anything, you have to breed it. What would it be?
Oh God, this is so unrealistic.
I know. That's the best part about it.
Right.
That's the fun part.
I love this question, but I'm so unrealistic about it. I would literally keep a Komodo dragon if I could, if that thing did not wind up murdering me.
I like that answer.
What it is. I love them. Just like they're good. They're malicious. I just saw a video of one like eating like I don't know, like a gazelle or something, and it was like alive while I was still eating, and it was just like, this is great. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, they are dinosaurs, that's for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I would love to visit Komodo Island, but I think they just blocked it off from people because they were smuggling their eggs.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Wow.
If you had any piece of advice for a new keeper coming in, it can be axolotl related, it can be generalist related, what would your piece of advice be?
Try your best not to let excitement get the best of you before doing your research or buying the animal. Even if you wind up buying it beforehand, which a lot of people do, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for advice, but also know that you may or may not get attacked, and don't let that stop you from owning or thinking that you can't do it, because you can. We all started from the bottom. We all make our way to where we are now. It's not like we've all been perfect and did everything the right way. We've all started the same. So I would just say, do your research, try to hold your excitement, because even with the most best patience, the reward of getting your animal when everything is set up is the most beautiful thing, rather than scrambling to get everything the day of and spending so much money and then worrying about setting it up properly and then asking questions later. Just take the time, do in-depth research, and enjoy your animal.
Nice. I like
Good
that.
answer.
And then my final question comes from the show Wildcrats.
I love that show.
Okay, what would, if you could have any creature power, what would your creature power be?
I would want to say to hold my breath so I can swim longer. I don't know. It's just a weird, like, because the ocean is only so explored so much, and you don't know what's in there. Not only that, but like the pollution and the garbage and the trash. I feel like if I had like a creature power, I would want to do that, to be able to, you know, help see life that no one sees, or maybe come upon a good discovery but not tell anybody about it because it's going to get removed. But like, you know, try to help like clean up the garbage, because it's like there are people trying to clean up the earth the best they can, but there are people that really don't give a crap about the water. So, but water feeds our land and our animals and us, and I think it needs to be more cared for.
Nice. Those were all great answers.
Yes. We've got to have you on after you've moved to West Virginia and have
oh
your
my God, yes.
For sure.
I really want to see that. Yeah. I was a park interpreter, and so what you had mentioned that, you know, we had to gear our, how does Custer State Park manage wildlife, to, you know, children and adults, so I really want to listen to your programs. That'd be great.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Ashley, thanks for coming on.
Yes.
We're gonna plug
Thank
right
you for
after the
having me.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We're gonna start putting that there. Yeah, thanks for coming on. I have had a great time.
Yes, yeah.
I did too. Thank you for having me.
We're almost 2.5 hours in. I'm gonna be in trouble.
Oh, no,
It's
I'm sorry.
okay. No. It's my fault. I choose to do this podcast, and I can choose to end it whenever I want.
Our curiosity and questions keep going.
Anyway, so where can people reach out to you, find you, and ask you any questions if they have any?
I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. So I believe, let me look this up here. I'm terrible with remembering all of this nonsense for myself. Oh,
They are all linked down in the description below.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, good. Because Instagram and Facebook, I have my ARC business page. And basically, I just do updates from my animals that I have now. Any questions asked, even if it's like other creatures, like I can help you research it, find you the best research. I don't have to own the animal to necessarily know how to help you. And that's another thing that I can't stand. It's like you have to know this animal in order to take care of it. It's like you don't. It's like you can get that owner's aspect, of course, with the trial and error. But I feel like generally you can help people try to find the best advice or where to go to find the best advice.
Yeah, care requirements are in a range, and as long as you can find that range and be accurate with it, then
exactly
you should be good.
Exactly.
Well, Peggy,
Yes.
if people want to reach out to you, where can they do so?
On Instagram, I'm Detmers Studios, and on Facebook, I'm Peggy Ann Detmers Artist, and also that's my art part of me. And then my reptile is Black Hills Turtle Forum on Facebook too.
Awesome. And as for me and the podcast, you can reach us at Herp Talk Radio on Instagram. We have a Herp Talk Radio group on Facebook. Join that. I post some articles in there every now and then. We don't talk about them on the show because, well, we just don't. Anyway, go check those out. You can watch the show live on Facebook too in the group. If you do have any questions, Ashley's in the group. Feel free to reach out to her through the group. That's what it's there for. That's all we have. We'll see you next week here.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.